Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the wilderness. Not to glamp, not to get away from it all in a curated Airbnb, but to survive. Like, actually survive. You've got no cell signal, no supply drop, no plan B. You're alone out here, maybe 100 miles from the nearest human voice, and the sun's starting to slip behind a line of pine-covered ridges. There's no panic, not yet, because you've got one ace up your sleeve. You know how to build a log cabin. Now just a heads up, you probably won't survive this. Most people wouldn't. That's not to be dramatic. It's just that building a structure from nothing, under pressure, with zero tolerance for mistakes, yeah, that's not a weekend project. But it used to be. For the early American mountain men, it was a way of life. They didn't build cute little cabins with decorative antlers and string lights. They built raw, serious shelters designed to withstand snow, predators, and sometimes even bullets. And they built them fast with purpose, because the price of getting it wrong wasn't a refund, it was death. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the time you're listening down in the comments. I always love seeing how far and wide you guys tune in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the forest, every footfall muffled by layers of pine needles and damp loam. The air smells like moss and smoke, though there's no fire nearby. Not yet. The sun throws long gold bars between the trees. You know night is coming fast, and with it, a temperature drop sharp enough to break fingers. You need a shelter now. Mountain men didn't see log cabins as little symbols of freedom or rustic vibes. They saw them as tools, like a rifle or a knife. Your cabin is your defense, your warmth, your food storage, your lookout post. It doesn't just keep the weather out, it keeps you in, alive, rested, ready. You find a clearing, not too open, not too shaded. It's gently sloped, not flat, so the water will drain off. That's lesson 1. The cabin starts before the first log is ever cut. The location is part of the cabin. Pick the wrong place and you're already losing. Mountain men knew how to read the land like a map. You're learning. You notice there's a game trail nearby, not too close, and the wind breaks cleanly here. That's a start. The next move is understanding what you're about to build. Not a house, not a cottage, not something with dormers and flower boxes. What you're building is a bunker disguised as a hut. A compression box that seals in heat and pushes out snow. A box with no electricity, no HVAC, and no help if it collapses on you in the middle of the night. So, yeah, stakes are high. You pause and picture it, just like they did. No blueprints, no apps, just spatial memory and necessity. One wall goes there, facing the eastern sun to catch the morning light. Another wall blocks the northern winds. Mountain men always aligned the cabin with the environment, not against it. There was no one-size-fits-all plan, just adaptation, response, and a solid sense of risk management. Now comes the real question. How big? Most people today think bigger is better, but not in the wild. Every extra square foot means more logs, more joints, more points of failure. It means more heat to maintain, more spots for snow to collect and sag your roof. So your cabin will be modest. A single room, maybe 10 by 12 feet, enough to sleep, cook, store gear, and occasionally shelter someone else. You don't build palaces out here. You build coffins with doors, narrow spaces that hold in warmth and shut out cold. You mark the corners with upright sticks, adjusting until it feels just right. And by feels, I mean you eye it, remeasure it by foot, double-check it against shadows and runoff lines. Your gut has to get smart out here. That's what the old-timers did. They might have carried compasses, but mostly they relied on signs. The way trees leaned, how lichens formed on bark, where birds gathered, how snow melted. Everything whispered data. They just listened. There's a quirk to how these cabins were treated too, something we've mostly forgotten. Back then, the cabin wasn't necessarily permanent. Sure, some stayed for decades, but others, they were meant to be abandoned. Used for a season, then left for the next traveller or trader. Sometimes burned even, to erase a trail or hide from enemies. The modern idea of home didn't always apply. Shelter was fluid, practical, impermanent. You didn't cling to it. You built it when you needed it and left it when you didn't. The sun dips low, your breath fogs as you exhale, and you realise something critical. This isn't about living comfortably, it's about not dying. You start collecting your tools, a solid axe, sharp as sin, maybe a draw knife, a mallet carved from a tree knot. That's it. No cordless drills, no laser levels, just edge and hand and rhythm. You begin stripping bark off a few test logs. The scent is sharp, sweet. It fills your nostrils and clings to your clothes. That sticky resin? It's part of why these cabins lasted. Left untreated, the logs harden and repel bugs, resist rot and seal naturally against wind. It's a forgotten science of wood selection and preparation, something we traded in for pressure-treated lumber and chemical preservatives. But the mountain men, they knew which trees did what, and they didn't need a forestry degree to prove it. So you start laying out your first logs. Tomorrow you'll cut your notches and begin the stack. But for tonight, you'll sleep on the ground with your back to a tree, boots still on, axe within reach. Because that's another thing mountain men understood. Nothing is safe until it's built, and even then, it's only safe for now. You wake before dawn, cold in your bones and stiff in your limbs. The tree behind you did little to block the night air, and your blanket, if you could even call it that, held about as much warmth as a damp sock. Your breath fogs instantly in the morning air, and you don't even bother trying to shake the cold out. There's no time for complaint. The forest is still dim, the sky a dull grey soup with the faintest pink teasing the edges. But the day has to start now, because what you're building can't be rushed and can't be late. Today's job is simple to say, brutal to do. Find the right trees. Now, before you go charging off and hacking down anything tall and round, slow down. Mountain men never just grabbed what was nearby. They selected their trees like a surgeon choosing a scalpel. Each log had a purpose. Walls, flooring, roofing, and you needed to know what kind of tree did what. Not all logs are created equal, and picking wrong doesn't just give you a shoddy cabin, it gives you rot, collapse, or a wall that caves in under snow or warps with the first change in weather. So you start walking. Boots crunch softly against frostbitten leaves and pine duff. The world is quiet in that way only forests can be. Still, hushed, listening. You keep your eyes scanning. You're looking for straight trunks, no wild curves or large knots. Those imperfections make for messy notches and uncooperative joints. You spot a stand of tall, slim trees with tight grain and few limbs, likely spruce. Mountain men loved spruce. It's light, straight, and strong, easy to strip and quick to dry. Fir is another favourite if you can find it. Avoid poplar, soft and spongy. Pine, it'll do in a pinch, but it oozes resin like a toddler with a runny nose. And if you're lucky enough to find tamarack, that's the gold standard, rot-resistant and tough as iron. You test a few with the butt of your axe, listening for that hollow, sharp thud that tells you the tree is seasoned but still alive. Dead standing wood is tempting, but it's risky. Might be riddled with bugs or dry to the point of splintering when it hits the ground. You mark a few trunks with a blade nick, spacing them out. You'll want more than you think. Mountain men always did. Each log you cut is a piece of a puzzle, and sometimes they split wrong, crack in transit, or don't quite fit when you start stacking. Over-collecting wasn't laziness, it was insurance. The fringe fact here is something you never think about. Some mountain men swore that trees had a direction. They believed certain trees fell easier if cut from a specific side, or that logs behave better if placed in the cabin with their tops always pointing the same way. Science hasn't exactly backed this up, but it was a deeply held belief. These men had no time for trial and error philosophies. They trusted intuition honed over years, maybe superstition, maybe silent knowledge passed through generations. You make the first cut just as the sun crests the ridgeline. The bite of your axe sends shockwaves through your arms, but the rhythm is clean, honest. It takes time. Minutes become an hour and the tree leans slowly, groaning like it's complaining about waking up. Then, with a last shudder, it topples. You step back, watching it fall through the underbrush with a crash that echoes across the hollow. It's violent, final. It feels like progress. Limbing and bucking comes next. That's trimming the branches and cutting the trunk into usable lengths. Your goal is consistency. Mountain men didn't have a tape measure, but they understood proportion. They used arm spans, strides, even the length of their tools to gauge logs. And here's the trick. They didn't cut all logs the same length unless the cabin was dead square. Each wall had its own length, and each log needed to be a little shorter than the one below it. to account for interlocking notches at the corners. Every cut matters. After a few trees, you're sweating despite the cold. Sawdust sticks to your skin, your fingers are nicked, and your back howls every time you stand. But you're not panicking. You're moving in the rhythm of old hands. The same steps, the same motions, repeated for centuries. This was the daily grind for the mountain man. Chop, haul, notch, stack, repeat. There was no YouTube to double check, no forum to ask if you'd done it right. Just your hands, your eyes, and the knowledge passed down from the guy who didn't freeze to death last winter. As you haul the logs to your clearing, rolling them, dragging them with a simple timber hook, you start to understand the weight of this craft. Not just physically, but mentally. Every decision has to be made before the work begins. There's no blueprint, no editing. Once the tree is down, it's yours. The wrong choice stays with you for the whole build. That's the part most modern builders don't get. It's not about using muscle. It's about using judgment. And here's a little scholarly debate that's never quite settled. Did the mountain men really know that much about forestry? Or were they just playing the odds, felling enough trees that some were bound to be the right ones? Some historians argue that mountain men were practical but not always precise. They learned from failure more than theory. Others insist these guys had a nearly spiritual connection with the land, reading the signs like language. Either way, the results speak for themselves. Cabins built 200 years ago still stand in the middle of nowhere, moss-covered and barely leaning, while our modern prefabs barely last a generation. By midday, you've got 10 logs stripped and ready. You rest your axe across your shoulder and look out at your clearing. It doesn't look like much, just wood and dirt. But it's happening. The start of a real shelter. The beginning of a place that will change with the season, take a beating from the elements, and hopefully hold its ground through the worst the wilderness can throw at you. And you realise, maybe for the first time, that this isn't just carpentry. It's philosophy in timber. It's self-reliance, patience, and a quiet trust in your own instincts. You're not just building walls, you're shaping your odds of seeing spring. You stand back from the clearing, 10 logs on the ground behind you, stripped, cleaned, and already feeling heavier than they did an hour ago. Your shoulders ache in that slow, deep bone way that tells you this isn't a sprint, it's a grind. But you're not done, not even close. Because now comes the part where your logs become a structure, not just a pile of deadweight, and that starts with notches. Sounds simple, right? Like just stacking Lincoln logs. But mountain men didn't build with toys, they built with timber. And if your notches are sloppy, your walls will shift, split or buckle before the first snow. You sit on one of the logs and begin eyeing up your corners. Think of your cabin like a wooden Jenga tower with zero tolerance for error. You're going to stack logs, crisscrossing at the corners, each one locked to the next by careful carving. That notch, the saddle notch usually, isn't there just to look rustic. It's what holds the structure together without nails, without metal, just wood-hugging wood, pressed into shape by gravity, friction, and your own stubbornness. You start measuring with your axe head, counting off width and depth. That's how they did it. No ruler, just muscle memory and blade geometry. Then, with the log cradled in a dugout rut to keep it from rolling, you score your marks and begin to chop. It's slow, meditative work. Shave, test fit. Shave again, chip by chip. You cut into the wood with a rhythm that's part practical, part musical. Thock, thock, thock. The forest swallows the sound like it's listening in. One of the lesser-known facts about this process: notches were often customized to the builder's preference, not just by region, but by individual. Some liked V-notches, others preferred square. Some even invented hybrid methods on the fly depending on the shape of the wood. There wasn't a right way, just a working way. It's a language you speak with your tools, not your words. The mountain men weren't uniform in style. They were fiercely personal in how they built. You weren't just building a shelter, you were signing your name in the corners. Now here's the big mistake rookies make, assuming logs are uniform. Spoiler alert, they're not. No matter how straight they look, trees grow with their own personality. Some taper, some twist. If you try to cut each notch the same, your walls will lean like they're trying to whisper secrets to the ground. Mountain men knew this. They adapted every notch to the quirks of the log in front of them. One log, one problem, one solution. You get your first 2 notches cut and set them into position, laying one log on top of another, opposite directions. They sit clean, tight enough that no daylight peeks through. That's good. That's very good. You roll on to the next, your body slipping into that pace of slow, methodical confidence. Every log is a battle, but the enemy is just physics, and you've got the upper hand if you take your time. Now here's a fringe detail most people forget. These corners, they're self-locking. The heavier the cabin gets, the tighter the notches hold. It's like nature's version of a ratchet strap. With enough vertical pressure, a well-notched corner becomes practically immovable, and this is all done without nails. No screws, just wood, weight, and willpower. It's a kind of engineering that we mostly lost when hardware stores became more common than blacksmiths. You spend the afternoon cutting and stacking, one log at a time. The wool grows slowly, chest-high by dusk. You're learning to read the wood, how it responds to the axe, how it gives a little grunt when you fit it just right. There's satisfaction in this that you can't buy or fake. It's the kind of work that empties your brain and fills your body with tired pride. There's a scholarly debate that floats around this topic. Did the mountain men actually invent their own joinery styles, or did they borrow them from older European traditions? Scandinavian saddle notches, German square fits, Slavic dovetails. Some argue the old world's techniques were simply adapted to the new woods and harsher climate of the frontier. Others believe the techniques evolved naturally through necessity and isolation. Either way, what you're doing now has centuries of momentum behind it. Every thock of your axe echoes with the hands of 1,000 forgotten builders. By nightfall, the cabin walls are up to your shoulders on 3 sides. You've left one gap for the door, though honestly, calling it a door feels generous. Right now, it's just an empty rectangle with a couple logs cut short. The rest of the entry will come later, probably with a slab of wood hung on leather or pegged with tree limbs. You step back and look at what you've made. It's squat, heavy, and kind of ugly, but also beautiful in its way. Honest, earned. The logs sit snug, one on top of the other, their ends notched and crossed like fingers laced together for a prayer. You run a hand across the edge, rough, sappy, uneven, perfect. You feel the fatigue in your legs as the sun slips down. There's no light but firelight now, and your fire is small, controlled. You're not trying to be seen. Mountain men often built with their backs to rock walls, cliffs, or dense brush. It wasn't about the view, it was about defense. A hidden cabin was a safe cabin, especially in a time when people might steal from you, or worse, just because they could. You're starting to see that mindset creep into your own. You angle your fire low, tuck your bedding under the eaves of your half-built wall, and keep your tools close. Above you, the stars crackle through the bare branches. Your hands throb from the day's work, but it's a good pain, a real one. And in the middle of nowhere, without signal or shelter or any modern convenience, you feel something strange. Peace. You're alone, sure, exposed. But you're also building something that might keep you alive. And for the first time, you're beginning to understand what those old mountain men knew from the start. When you shape the land with your own hands, even if just a little, it starts to shape you back. You wake up to your own breath, puffing in the cold morning air, the fire long dead, the sky just beginning to trade its indigo for a soft, washed-out grey. Your joints creak like ungreased hinges as you sit up, brushing sawdust from your clothes. There's a thin layer of frost on the logs, your logs, and even though your bones are chilled, there's something about seeing those walls still standing, still waiting, that warms you better than any blanket ever could. The cabin isn't much yet, but it's starting to feel like yours. Today, you face a silent but crucial detail: orientation. Not the yoga retreat kind. This is the deadly serious make-or-break choice of how your cabin faces the world, where it sits in relation to the wind, the sun, and the slope of the land. And unlike a lot of modern builds where people obsess over curb appeal or the view from the breakfast nook, mountain men knew orientation was survival. You face the wrong direction out here, and you're not dealing with mild drafts. You're dealing with 60-mile-per-hour winter gales, snowpack piling against your front door, and all your heat disappearing through a poorly placed wall. So you stand there in your clearing, the sun just rising over the trees, and you pay attention. Really pay attention. Your breath drifts sideways. You make note of the wind's path. The eastern light hits the clearing first, warming the frost just a little faster. That's something. Mountain men always paid close attention to how light moved across the site. An eastern or southeastern orientation meant early warmth, passive heat. It helped melt snow near the cabin, extended the growing window for little kitchen gardens, and gave them something critical on long, dark mornings, a reason to get up. You run your hand along the southern wall in progress. This one will catch the most sun during winter, and if you play your cards right, it'll help warm the cabin naturally. A few dark logs soaked in resin will absorb that heat like a sponge and release it slowly. It's primitive solar power, low-tech, high survival. And here's a fun fringe fact. Some trappers were known to lean dark stones or even flat pieces of rusted iron against the sunny sides of their cabins to absorb extra warmth, a little frontier engineering born out of sheer discomfort. But orientation isn't just about heat, it's also about what's coming for you. That's not paranoia, that's practical. You don't face your cabin directly into the prevailing wind, that's just inviting trouble. Instead, you shift it slightly, let the wind roll along the walls, not slam into them. Think of it like angling a shield during battle. Straight on, you absorb the full blow. Tilted, you deflect it. Mountain men understood that, even if they never wrote it down. And here's the part people often forget. It's not just where your cabin points, it's how it sits on the land. You want a slight slope, not enough to cause a lean, but enough to drain water away from the base. Standing water is the silent killer of cabins. It rots logs from the bottom up, turns your floor into a swamp, and invites every bug in the county. That's why you don't build on a flat meadow, no matter how nice it looks. You want elevation, just a little, and an angle that guides water away. Mountain men didn't need gutters, they had gravity. You kneel and check the dirt under the structure. Still dry. That's a good sign. You dig a few quick trenches around the foundation logs, shaping crude channels to steer rain and snowmelt. Not glamorous, but essential. Every drop that doesn't touch your logs is a win. And here's something debated among historians. Did mountain men dig shallow foundations on purpose, or was it just convenience? Some say they intentionally set logs directly on stones or bare earth to speed up construction and improve mobility. Others argue they lacked the time or tools for proper footings. Either way, they were aware of water's destructive power, and did what they could with what they had. Your logs rest on flat rocks now, chosen for their size and surface, placed beneath each corner. That little bit of lift buys you time, maybe years. In a world without treated lumber, that's everything. You adjust one that's sunk a little overnight, wedging a smaller stone beneath it. It's a subtle shift, but the entire structure groans as it settles back into balance. You stand up listening. There's a quietness to it now, a kind of structural peace. Like the cabin approves. Back inside the shell of your half-built home, you start planning the window. Not windows, plural, just one, maybe two if you're feeling fancy. Mountain men weren't trying to brighten up the place. They were trying to survive. Each window was a weakness, a hole to be plugged in winter, a place where heat escaped and animals, or worse, could peer in. But you need light, a little at least. So you pick a spot on the southern wall, low enough to catch sunlight even in the dead of January, high enough to avoid snowdrift. You'll cut it later, once the structure is more stable. And now, the door. It needs to face away from the wind, ideally to the east or southeast, but never north unless you like waking up with snow in your beard. Mountain men sometimes added a dog trot, a sort of open breezeway between two cabin halves, but that was for bigger builds, often by groups or for trading posts. For a lone man or a small family, one door, solid, hinged with leather straps or pinned with wood dowels. It didn't need to be pretty, it just needed to close and stay closed. You start trimming the doorway opening, carving the notches shorter, giving yourself a 5-foot clearance. That's another forgotten detail. Cabins weren't made for comfort, they were made to hold heat. Smaller doors, lower ceilings, tight rooms. The less air inside, the easier it is to keep warm. You ducked when you entered because warmth stayed low. There's no thermostat out here, just physics and fire. By midday, the sun is high and you pause to eat. Some jerky maybe, or dried fruit if you've got it. You sit on a log and look at what you've built. The orientation feels right. The door catches the breeze, but not the wind. The sunlight hits the future window just right. The logs are square, tight, confident. You're not just stacking wood. You're solving problems in advance, answering nature's attacks before they even arrive. And that's what the mountain men knew so well. Every part of the cabin was a negotiation with nature, not a defiance, not a rebellion, just a respectful handshake. You build with the land, not in spite of it. You let the trees tell you how high, the wind tell you which way, the sun tell you when to rise. You're not taming the wilderness. You're borrowing a little piece of it and promising not to wreck it too badly while you're here. The light starts to fade and you pack up your tools for the day. One more notch done, one more course of logs laid. You're getting faster, but not sloppy. Precision still matters. The trees are watching. The wind is listening. And somewhere deep down, maybe the ghosts of the old mountain men are too, nodding once, then fading back into the dusk. You wake to rain. Not a heavy, dramatic downpour. Just a steady whisper against the canopy, soft but persistent, like nature tapping its fingers against the roof you haven't finished yet. You lie still under your makeshift lean-to, watching droplets streak down your pack, darkening the logs stacked nearby. This is the first test, not of your skills necessarily, but of your planning. Because today, the cabin's foundation will either hold up or start to betray you. Most people think of a foundation as something you pour in concrete, with rebar and laser levels and guys in reflective vests arguing over blueprints. But the mountain men, their foundation was dirt, rocks, and common sense. And if you did it wrong, no one was coming to fix it. No warranty, no second chances, just slow, creeping failure that showed up as sagging corners, buckling floors, and rot where your walls touched ground they never should have trusted. You push yourself up, bones grumbling, and inspect your work. So far, so good. The water's draining away from your structure, not toward it. The trenches you dug yesterday are doing their job, carving miniature rivers around the perimeter. The foundation stones, flat, dense, heavy, have kept your base logs lifted, which means you pass test 1, elevation. Mountain men understood this rule so instinctively it didn't even need to be said. Logs rot when they stay wet. End of story. You walk the perimeter slowly, watching how the rain behaves. There's a low spot near the northeast corner where water is pooling. Nothing catastrophic, but it needs to be addressed. You grab your shovel and redirect the runoff, digging a shallow trench that feeds into the natural slope. That right there? That's the part we forgot. Constant correction. A log cabin wasn't something you built once and then admired. It was something you maintained like your life depended on it, because spoiler, it did. The ground under your cabin doesn't look like much. Dirt, rock, maybe a patch of moss or two. But mountain men could read soil like we read weather apps. Too sandy and it collapses. Too soft and it shifts. Too wet and it becomes a grave for your floor joists. What you want is firm, slightly elevated ground with good drainage. Not too steep, not too flat. Just enough grade to keep things moving when the skies open up. Here's a fringe fact for you. Some old trappers would burn the ground before building. They'd torch off the grass and weeds, not just to clear space, but to chase off bugs, dry the soil, and in some cases, even change the pH of the dirt to make it less appealing to burrowing pests. Did it work? Maybe. Hard to say. But it shows just how layered their thinking was. Every move served at least 3 purposes. You crouch at the base of the cabin and inspect your bottom logs. They're damp but not soaked. The bark's already stripped, which helps. They'll dry faster that way, and insects have fewer places to hide. You remember that old piece of advice you read somewhere? The first log is the most important one. Everything else just sits on top of it. That's not just carpentry wisdom, it's philosophy. If the base is solid, the rest can wobble a little. If the base is weak, even perfect walls will fail. And that's where your mind shifts, to the way modern folks think about foundation. These days, we're obsessed with visuals, smooth finishes, level floors. But the mountain men were obsessed with function. Could it drain? Could it hold weight? Could it handle freeze and thaw cycles without cracking apart like a dropped plate? It didn't matter if it looked like a mud pit as long as it held. There's an ongoing debate among preservationists about how much the original builders actually knew about long-term ground movement. Did they understand soil compression and frost heave the way we do today? Or did they just get lucky relying on trial and error? The answer's probably somewhere in between. They might not have had textbooks or charts, but they had experience. Years of watching one cabin crumble while another stood tall gave them a mental library of what worked and what didn't. You kneel by a foundation stone and feel the edge. It's cold, wet, and a little slippery with lichen. These rocks weren't dragged in from miles away. You found them nearby. Flat, heavy, good shoulders to carry logs. That's another thing the mountain men got right. Use what's local. Don't waste energy hauling exotic materials when the land already provides everything you need. These guys weren't just building cabins, they were forming alliances with the ground. You think about the foundations of homes today: poured concrete, waterproof membranes, plastic vapor barriers. They work, sure, but they also create distance. They separate the house from the land like they're not supposed to touch. Out here, there is no distance. The cabin has to touch the land. It has to learn its moods, its shifting weight. You don't just build on the land, you build with it. Around midday, the rain lets up. You walk the trench lines again and note how well they performed. The low spot is still a bit soft, so you stack some extra flat stones there. Quick drainage fix. That's how it went for the old-timers too. Constant adjustment. Tiny corrections. No one hammered in a perfect foundation on day one. They built, tested, revised. A process, not a moment. You start laying a few more courses of logs now that the weather's clear. Each one clicks into place a little easier than the last. The walls are gaining mass, and with that, a kind of dignity. You can feel the structure settling in. The foundation isn't just holding, it's welcoming the weight. That's how you know it's right. And maybe the most humbling part, the silence. No machinery, no generators. Just the occasional groan of timber and the slap of your blade against wood. You're not managing a site, you're participating in one. There's no separation between you, the structure, and the land. You're all just different expressions of the same raw material, trying to work out an arrangement that'll keep you alive through winter. As the day winds down, you sit back and look at the base of your cabin. It's dirty, it's uneven, it smells like wet bark and crushed moss, and it's perfect, because it's real. Every rock was lifted by hand, every trench dug by instinct, every mistake fixed before it became a problem. You lie back on a pile of stripped branches and stare up at the ridgepole you'll soon install, and you realise the foundation isn't just under your cabin, it's under you, your judgment, your effort, your humility in the face of nature's rules. That's the part we forgot, that a solid foundation has nothing to do with cement, and everything to do with respect. The next morning greets you with a stillness so complete it almost hums. No wind, no birds yet, just the distant crackle of frost thawing on sunlit branches. Your breath still ghosts out in front of you, but today has a promise in it. The logs are dry again, the ground has firmed up. It's a good day to get serious about shaping, and by that you mean it's time to work with tools that don't make noise, but absolutely demand respect. Today, you learn why the mountain men didn't just love their axes, they relied on them like lungs. You pull your gear out from under the tarp. There's your axe, of course, sharp enough to scare itself. A draw knife, polished and eager. A two-man crosscut saw, even if you're just one guy. That's the thing. These tools don't work for you. You work with them. And in the age before chainsaws and power drills, a man's relationship with his tools wasn't about convenience. It was about survival. Your axe isn't flashy. It doesn't have titanium or carbon fibre or a brand-name sheath. It's just iron and hickory, two materials with more muscle memory than most modern-day builders. You run your fingers along the grain of the handle. It's smooth where your hand always falls, and a little chipped at the base, like it's seen a few winters you haven't. Mountain men didn't use axes because they were cool. They used them because, with enough skill, one axe could do the job of 6 other tools. You begin the morning with a rhythm. Short, fast strokes on a pine round your splitting for roofing slats. The axe bites in like it's glad to be working. You're not swinging hard, you're swinging correctly. That's a key lesson the old-timers knew and we've mostly forgotten. Brute strength will break your back. Precision saves your life. Now you switch to the draw knife. It looks like something out of a horror movie, but in your hands it's surgical. You brace a log on your makeshift shaving horse and start pulling long curls of bark and sapwood away, exposing the clean raw meat of the timber beneath. This is where you shape the logs for the roof ridge, shaving flat so they'll sit snug against each other without wobbling. The draw knife whispers as it works. It's not loud, not fast, just steady. Like all good wilderness tools, it rewards patience and punishes rush. Here's something a lot of people don't know. Most mountain men preferred hand tools even after more advanced options existed. It wasn't just nostalgia or stubbornness, it was about trust. A good axe never runs out of fuel. A saw doesn't care if it's cold. You can sharpen steel with a rock and make a handle from a fallen branch if you break it. That's redundancy, the frontier kind. The kind that doesn't leave you helpless in the middle of a blizzard because your lithium-ion battery died. You remember reading once about trappers who could hear the difference between a sharp blade and a dull one, just from how it sounded in wood. Some could even tell if their draw knife needed oiling by how the shavings curled. That sounds like myth until you're here, doing it yourself, and you feel it. The blade sings when it's right, grinds when it's wrong. There's a tactile language you start to understand. Not fluently, but you're getting there. By midday, you're hauling your two-man saw over to a fresh log. It's almost a joke. The thing is longer than your body, and you've got no partner. But mountain men worked alone often. They'd brace one end, use body weight and angle to get it moving. You do the same. It's awkward at first. A little humiliating, honestly. You get stuck more than you cut, but once it starts to glide, it glides. The teeth don't chew, they swim through the wood. It's hypnotic. That saw, by the way, has a history. The crosscut pattern was refined over decades. Some claim it was inspired by Roman innovations. Others say it came from medieval timber framers. But on the frontier it was gold. Faster than an axe for felling, cleaner for bucking, and it made teamwork possible. Two men with one saw could drop a tree in minutes that would have taken an hour alone. There's a scholarly debate about which came first in American wilderness building, the axe or the saw, and honestly the answer doesn't matter. What matters is they worked together, just like the men who used them. Now here's the twist. These tools, in all their simplicity, created precision that modern machines struggle to replicate. A skilled builder with an axe and adze could notch logs to tighter tolerances than a portable mill. That sounds ridiculous until you remember, these guys weren't building for fun. They were building to live. So they had no choice but to get better, faster, cleaner. Every strike of the axe was calculated, every pull of the saw honed by repetition. You pause for water and look at your growing pile of shaped logs. They're uniform in a way that's not quite symmetrical but definitely intentional. Each one looks like it belongs here. That's the beauty of hand tools. They don't impose shape, they find it. A chainsaw cuts because you tell it to. A draw knife guides you toward the shape the wood already wants to be. You think about how people today buy pre-sharpened tools, power planers, cordless everything. That's fine, nothing wrong with convenience. But there's a quiet dignity in using something that demands your time, your sweat, your humility. Mountain men weren't faster than us. They were just closer to the work. They weren't chasing efficiency, they were chasing permanence. As the sun starts to dip, your body is sore in places you didn't know existed. Your hands are raw, not bleeding, not blistered, just used. And your tools, they're worn but happy, if metal can be happy. The axe still balances perfectly in your hand. The saw's teeth have lost none of their bite. The draw knife gleams faintly, even in the shadow of the pines. You hang your tools carefully on a peg you've hammered into one of the wall logs. That's another thing the mountain men understood. Tools are companions, not disposables. You don't toss them in a pile. You give them a place. You respect what they've earned. You settle in for the night. Fire low, food simple. You stare at your tools in the glow and realize something kind of ridiculous. You trust them. Not just to cut wood, but to carry your effort forward. These pieces of iron and wood have become your voice, your signature. Every corner notch, every shaving, every joint that doesn't leak, those are your words, written in grain and groove. And you smile, just a little, because now you get it. Mountain men didn't just build with tools, they became them. A man and his axe weren't separate things, they were just two ends of the same purpose. And tomorrow, you'll keep carving your side of the story. You'll still saw the next morning, saw in that way where you wake up and half expect your limbs to simply not work anymore. You roll over slowly, every muscle screaming in protest, and groan into the musty wool of your blanket. The memories of yesterday's longship voyage come flooding back like the tide. The icy water in your boots, the endless rowing, the taste of fish that may or may not have been from the previous century. But today, things are different. Today is blot. You sit up straighter, suddenly wide awake. The air in the longhouse hums with anticipation. People are bustling around, cleaning, cooking, oiling tools, and unpacking the ceremonial gear from where it's been hidden away since the last seasonal gathering. There's excitement, sure, but underneath it all something heavier, a little darker. Because blot isn't just a party, it's a sacrifice. You've heard whispers about it all your life, how the gods must be fed, how blood opens their ears, how one misstep could curse a whole village. You've never seen one up close before. Kids are usually kept at a distance unless they're helping with preparations. But now that you're old enough to row a boat without crying, you're apparently also old enough to witness blood spill on sacred stone. The entire village has gathered in the central clearing, where the sacred grove looms, all crooked trees and heavy silence. A ring of standing stones marks the space, their surfaces etched with runes that older people claim move if you stare at them too long. You don't try. Just standing here feels like you're being watched by something ancient and slightly unimpressed with you. An altar has been set up, low and wide, made of rough stone and stained dark from centuries of offerings. A clay bowl sits on top of it, filled with twigs, herbs, and mead. Next to it, tied to a wooden post, is a goat. Nervous, twitchy, eyes wide with the kind of understanding animals probably shouldn't have. You swallow hard. You liked that goat. Its name was Snorri. The Gothi, or priest, steps forward, draped in a thick wool cloak embroidered with red and gold thread. His beard is long and braided, and his eyes scan the crowd like he can see who's been skipping prayers. He raises his hands and begins to chant in Old Norse, the kind of language that vibrates in your bones even if you don't understand every word. Around you, the villagers join in, low, droning, rhythmic. It's not pretty exactly. It's raw, primal. Then comes the sacrifice. The Gothi draws a blade, curved, glinting, and clearly sharpened with intention. He moves with ritual precision, stepping up to Snorri and placing a hand on its trembling head. A few final words, a sudden flash of silver, and then the spray. You blink, stunned. The blood arcs in a perfect red line, spattering the altar, the stones, and some of the nearby crowd, who don't flinch. The Gothi catches the rest in a wooden bowl, then dips a bundle of sacred twigs into it and begins to flick the blood onto the gathering. When it hits your cheek, hot and metallic, you freeze. You've been marked. You don't know what that means yet, but everyone else looks relieved, almost grateful. There's debate among scholars about whether human sacrifice was still practiced during this period. Some accounts say yes, slaves, criminals, or volunteers offered up to the gods in exchange for blessings or good harvests. Others argue it was exaggerated, a mythologized echo of earlier, wilder times. But standing here, watching a goat's blood steam in the cold air as people murmur thanks to Odin and Freyr, you understand one thing clearly. They believed it worked. After the sacrifice, the mood shifts. The tension eases like a held breath finally released. The rest of the ritual unfolds more like a feast, still sacred, still serious, but with food, drink, and music slowly replacing the heavy quiet. Huge cauldrons of stew simmer over open fires. Mead is passed around, hot and spiced. You eat roasted turnips, black bread, and more goat, though you don't ask if it's that goat. You hope not. A skald starts reciting a tale near the fire, his voice rising and falling like a wave. It's the saga of a man who tricked a frost giant by disguising himself as a bear. It's mostly nonsense, probably, but the way he tells it makes everyone lean in, mouths full, eyes wide. You sip mead, just a little, and let the warmth ease your still aching arms. The skald ends the tale with a joke about Loki's missing pants, and everyone roars with laughter. Someone hands you a carved bone charm, a gift from the priest, they say. You trace the runes with your thumb. It's supposed to bring protection, though no one says from what. You tuck it into your belt pouch like it's gold. Later that night, after most people have either passed out or wandered home, you sneak back to the altar. The stone is still damp. You reach out and touch it, half expecting something to happen. Thunder, lightning, a voice in the trees. Nothing, just silence, and the deep pulsing sense that someone somewhere noticed. You step back and stare at the stars. There's one that flickers differently tonight, or maybe that's your imagination. You pull your cloak tighter and head back to the longhouse. As you lie down, exhausted but wide awake, you realize you're beginning to see the gods the way your elders do, not as distant myths, but as real forces, hungry for attention, always watching, always wanting something in return. And just like that, your childhood slips a little further behind you. You wake up with a taste in your mouth like you chewed on an iron nail all night. Yesterday's blot lingers, not just in your memory, but in your skin. You swear you can still smell goat blood on your hands, even after scrubbing them with cold water and pine needles until they turned raw. Everyone else in the longhouse is stirring slowly, groaning their way through hangovers and meat comas, but you're up early, squatting near the fire, examining your reflection in the water bowl. You open your mouth. Something's not right. There it is. right between your front teeth. A chip. Tiny, but unmistakable. The grainy bread and gritty flour combined with your recent fall during Natalika have taken their toll. One chipped tooth at 12. That's ahead of schedule, honestly. You're not surprised. Vikings aren't known for their dental health. Bread is often ground using stone mills, and over time bits of grit and sand make their way into the dough. Every bite of that hearty barley loaf is like chewing a handful of gravel. Multiply that by 3 meals a day, and you've got a dental disaster waiting to happen. Your gums ache constantly. Your molars feel loose, and there's no such thing as brushing your teeth. Maybe a rinse with water, maybe a twig if you're fancy, but mostly it's just a slow spiral into oral ruin. You think back to your grandfather, who has about 4 teeth left, all of them yellow and shaped like tiny tombstones. He jokes about it, sure, but you've seen the way he winces when he chews, and once a year he pours strong mead on a rag and bites down while someone yanks out the worst of the rotten ones with iron tongs. It's less medicine, more medieval horror show. Today is your turn to help gather medicinal herbs, or, more accurately, whatever plants haven't died under a blanket of snow and frost. You follow the healer, a woman named Haldis, who smells like moss and old onions. She's not particularly warm, but she's sharp, always muttering about spirits and balance, and she knows every useful plant within 20 miles. You trudge through slushy paths, your boots soak through in minutes, while she points out tiny sprigs of green poking out near rocks or under trees. That's woundwort, she says, plucking a leaf and shoving it under your nose. It smells like bitter tea and dirt. Stops bleeding. Unless the bleeding's inside, then you're just doomed. She moves on, humming something tuneless, and you hurry to keep up. She also shows you reindeer moss, dried bark for fevers, and something she claims is bear mint, though it smells more like old socks. You gather it all in a sack, sneezing from the strong smells. You're told it's for making salves, teas and poultices, especially for teeth. The villagers who complain of mouth pain usually end up chewing a moss paste mixed with animal fat and salt. If they're lucky, it numbs the ache. If they're not, well, they stop complaining. Permanently. That night, back in the longhouse, Haldis mixes one of her pastes. It's for your uncle, who's been moaning about his gums for a week. She pulls him over, sticks a finger full of greenish paste in his mouth and mutters a prayer to Air, the goddess of healing. He looks like he wants to die. Everyone else watches with a mix of curiosity and pity. Vikings, for all their toughness, feared tooth pain. Not because they were squeamish. These are people who think a proper leg wound builds character, but because there was no clear solution. No one could fight their way out of an abscess. One fringe belief among some Viking-age settlements was that toothaches were caused by tiny worms burrowing inside the teeth. The cure? Heat up a metal pick and drive it into the infected area. This, you're assured, drives the worm out. You sincerely hope no one ever tries that on you. There's a moment of peace as the fire crackles and someone passes around a bowl of warm milk and mead. You sip slowly, the sweetness masking the tang of sour curd. Someone starts a quiet song, an old lullaby about a mother warning her children not to wander too far into the woods, or else the night wolf will eat their bones. Comforting. As you lie down to sleep, you think about your own teeth. You prod the chipped one gently with your tongue. It doesn't hurt yet, but it will. You can feel the crack deepening, waiting for the next bite of crunchy barley to push it over the edge. You make a silent vow to chew on the left side only, maybe forever. The sky outside is cloudy, hiding the stars. The longhouse settles into that strange nighttime quiet. Goats shuffling, someone farting loudly in their sleep, the occasional snore that sounds like a dying walrus. You close your eyes, face turned toward the hearth, wondering if there's a god for teeth. If there is, you'd like to light a candle or offer a bone or something. Anything to keep from becoming the next person to bite down and scream. Is bath night, allegedly. You're not quite sure yet if this is good news or a threat. The longhouse smells particularly ripe, like wet fur, burnt meat grease, and that one cousin who insists that snow counts as a bath if you roll in it aggressively enough. But word has gone around, tonight, the bathhouse is being fired up, and you, lucky you, are on the list. Vikings, contrary to their dirty reputation, actually take bathing pretty seriously, at least compared to other medieval folk who bathe once per coronation. In fact, bath night happens every Saturday in many settlements, a tradition that will eventually give us the word Logadagur, washing day, or as we know it, Saturday. So while you're still crusty, scratched, and probably hosting a thriving flea civilization somewhere in your hair, tonight is your moment of redemption. The bathhouse is a low wooden structure off to the side of the village, half dug into the earth and covered with turf for insulation. Steam curls from the small smoke hole in the roof, rising into the icy night like a dragon breathing out after dinner. Inside it's dim, hot, and damp. The closest thing to paradise you'll ever know. You step in and immediately hit a wall of humidity that makes your lungs feel confused. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your face starts sweating before you've even sat down. The interior is simple, a stone hearth piled with heated rocks, a wooden tub filled with water that's still slightly boiling, and a few benches that creak when you sit on them. One of the older men throws a scoop of water over the hot rocks, and steam erupts in a hiss that fogs up everything. Your eyes sting. Your paws scream in joy and confusion. You strip down, awkwardly, trying to keep some dignity in a room full of half-naked family members, and lower yourself into the communal bath. The water is not as clean as you'd hoped. Bits of hair float in it, a leaf, maybe something that used to be an insect. But it's warm, blessedly warm. You sink in up to your chin and let the heat seep into your sore muscles, loosening knots you didn't even know existed. Someone passes you a block of lye soap. It smells like ash and crushed herbs and burns a little when it gets into your cuts. But it lathers, sort of, and you scrub yourself down like you're trying to erase your own existence. Layers of grime come off in satisfying clouds. You dig under your fingernails, scrape your scalp with your fingernails, and even find a tick in a place you're not going to talk about. You flick it into the fire like a tiny demon. Here's the wild part. Vikings were known across Europe for their relative cleanliness. In fact, English monks wrote complaints about Viking raiders showing up freshly bathed and groomed, stealing local women's attention with their fancy combs and clean beards. It was a real grievance. Apparently smelling less like a corpse was a power move. You hold on to that thought as you scrape behind your ears. Nah! To the side of the room someone is plucking their eyebrows. No joke. It's your cousin Ragnar, and she's using a sharpened clamshell. She looks at you like this is perfectly normal, and honestly here, it is. Grooming is a social ritual. You might not have shoes that fit, but you have a comb. You might have 6 broken teeth, but your beard will be neat if you can grow one. You sit and listen to the chatter swirling around the bathhouse. Stories of the sea. Gossip about who was seen sneaking out of whose longhouse. Complaints about the mead being watered down. One man tells the tale of a woman who cursed her husband's bathwater with goat bile and turned him sterile. No one's sure if it's true, but everyone laughs uncomfortably anyway. Then comes the scraping. Someone brings out the strigil, a curved blade used to scrape off dead skin. You take a turn, standing up and letting a friend drag the dull metal edge along your back. It's surprisingly satisfying. Gross, but satisfying. Piles of greyish grime roll off your skin like eraser shavings. You feel lighter, like you've shed both dirt and sin. There's a small scholarly debate about whether Vikings truly used strigils, or if that was more common in Romanised regions. Some say they borrowed the practice. Others argue their version was cruder, just sticks and cloth. Regardless, scraping happened. Cleanliness mattered, and honestly, anything that makes your skin stop itching is welcome. After the bath, you towel off with a stiff linen cloth and throw your tunic back on. It's still slightly damp from where you left it, but it feels cleaner against your skin than before. Your hair drips down your back. You comb it carefully, bone comb in one hand, fingers deftly detangling the worst knots. You even take a moment to clean under your nails with a sliver of whittled wood. Back outside, the cold hits you like a slap. Your skin steams. You wrap your cloak tightly and shuffle back toward the longhouse, clean for the first time in what feels like forever. You feel lighter, almost civilized, like you could walk into a monastery, flip your hair, and scandalize a bishop. Inside, your family notices. Your mother gives you a brief approving glance. Your little sister sniffs the air dramatically and declares, "You smell like leaves." You nod proudly. This is probably the closest thing to a compliment you'll get all month. You settle by the fire, hair still damp, skin tingling, and stretch out with a bone-deep sigh. Someone offers you a chunk of dried apple. You eat it slowly, savouring the way it doesn't taste like dirt or despair, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel human again. Clean, rested, whole. But you know how this works. By morning you'll smell like goat again. Your nails will be black with muck, and your scalp will be crawling with whoever decides to move back in first. cleanliness is temporary. Filth is forever. Still, tonight you're winning. You're barely awake and already in trouble. The sun hasn't even crept over the hills yet, but someone's shouting your name outside the longhouse, and you can tell by the tone that this isn't a come-help-with-breakfast situation. You scramble to your feet, half-dressed, and step out into the frost-bitten morning, breath steaming from your mouth. A thin crust of snow crunches under your boots, and there, standing in the village clearing, is Torbjorn. Local hothead, and unfortunately your second cousin, holding a broken fence post and looking furious. "You let the goats into my field," he growls, pointing the shattered wood at you like an accusation from the gods themselves. "They ate my winter hay." You blink at him. You've barely been outside since bath night, but facts rarely win arguments here. In the Viking world, disputes are inevitable. You live in close quarters, share resources, and survival depends on everyone pulling their weight, or at least pretending to. And when something goes wrong, someone has to be blamed. Today, that's you. Torbjorn wants blood. Not literally, but close. His father's ox died last month and he's been sour ever since. Now he's threatening to take your best axe in compensation, and that's not going to fly. Not because the axe is particularly special. It's crooked and the head wobbles, but because it's your axe. Your father steps in before things can escalate. "We'll go to the thing," he says simply. The thing is the local assembly, a kind of open-air court where grievances are aired, settlements are proposed, and justice is doled out, sometimes with words, sometimes with steel. Everyone in the region gathers for it, and while some cases are simple, land disputes, stolen chickens, drunken insults, others spiral into blood feuds that can last generations. You're not thrilled to be part of one, but you march down to the clearing anyway, trying to walk like someone who isn't about to get publicly humiliated. The thing takes place in a wide field near the edge of the forest. Stones mark the perimeter, and people are already gathering, some sitting, some pacing, others sharpening knives. The law speaker, an older man with an unsettlingly sharp memory, arrives last. He carries the law in his head, literally. There are no scrolls, no documents, just verses passed down and recited by heart. You wonder what would happen if he forgot a line. Probably a stabbing. Torbjorn presents his case first, theatrically describing the massacre of his hay bales, waving his arms like he's Odin himself raining down wrath. Then it's your turn. You calmly explain that you were nowhere near his field, that your goats were penned, and that maybe he just didn't build a very good fence. The law speaker listens, nods, mutters a few phrases in Old Norse you don't fully understand, then calls for witness testimony. Unfortunately, Torbjorn has brought his cousin, who conveniently saw you near the gate that morning, even though you were face down in straw at the time. It's a mess. Your stomach churns. Justice in Viking society isn't a matter of guilt or innocence the way you're used to. It's about honour, reputation and balance. If someone loses something, someone else has to pay. If not, things escalate. Fast. First it's an axe, then it's a goat, then someone's barn catches fire, and suddenly it's a feud that gets sung about for centuries, usually ending in multiple funerals and one cousin banished to Iceland. Luckily your father proposes a settlement. He offers a bag of dried cod and a pair of antlers, symbolic compensation. Not much, but enough to avoid escalation. Torbjorn accepts it with a scowl. He knows it's a weak win, but a win nonetheless. The crowd disperses. No one got stabbed. That's considered a good outcome. Now here's the odd part. Despite their love for violence, Vikings had an extensive legal system. Some scholars argue it was one of the more structured societies of its time, with clear codes for murder, theft, insult, and even divorce. But the enforcement was flexible. If you ignored the law's decision, the only real consequence was exile, or someone killing you later in a blood feud. So, high-stakes stuff. A fringe historical theory suggests that the more rural the region, the more performative the law became, more theatre than actual order. Today felt like a bit of both. Later that afternoon you sit by the river skipping stones and stewing. You're not angry that you were accused. Okay, you are. But more annoyed by how little truth seemed to matter. In Viking law, perception is everything. If people think you're guilty, you are. Reputation is currency here. Lose that, and you might as well pack your things and move to some cursed rock in the North Atlantic. You practice throwing your knife at a tree for a while, pretending it's Torbjorn. It thunks into the bark, wobbling slightly. Not a kill shot. You'll work on it. Back home, your father pats you on the shoulder. "You did well," he says. "Better to settle than start a fight you can't finish." Then he hands you a chunk of hard cheese, the good kind, saved for moments like this. You chew it silently, watching smoke rise from distant chimneys, wondering how many other settlements are putting out similar small fires of anger and ego today. As night falls, the village is quiet again. The goats are penned, securely thank you, and the stars blink into view, one by one. You lie down near the fire, arms behind your head, and think about justice. How strange it is, how fragile, how sometimes just avoiding a spear to the face feels like winning. And you promise yourself that next time, you'll tie the gate twice, just in case. It's barely dawn, and you're already being handed a weapon. That's how you know today isn't going to be normal. There's no firewood run, no goat milking, no grain grinding, number. Today, you're going on your very first raid. You try to act cool, nodding like you've been waiting for this your whole life. Inside, your stomach is having an existential crisis. You've heard the stories. Glorious battles, gold-filled monasteries, terrified priests running in circles while their holy books burn. But stories always leave out the smell of blood and the sound of someone sobbing for their mother. No one sings songs about throwing up from fear. You load onto the longship with the others, the same way you did during the trade trip, only this time there's no cargo, just weapons. Shields line down the sides of the hull like a row of warning signs. Axes sharpened to a glint. A pile of spare blades sits wrapped in cloth, and a sack of iron nails for patching the ship if it takes damage. And you, standing there trying to hold your borrowed axe like it doesn't feel like it weighs more than your entire soul. The plan is simple. There's a monastery across the water, a few days' sail, small but rich enough to be worth the effort. The monks won't fight back, at least not well. Everyone says it'll be easy, quick, just grab what you can and go. But you've also heard the story of Ulf, who took an arrow to the knee from a terrified novice with shaking hands. Died from infection, they say. Soft tissue went black. You try not to think about Ulf as you help push the ship into the water. The rowing is worse than last time, not because your muscles aren't ready, but because of the anticipation. It stretches every moment into something long and sharp. The horizon never seems to move. The sky is grey. The sea is endless. Someone sings a low chant to pass the time, but no one joins in. This isn't the kind of voyage where you sing. When land finally appears, it's just a sliver of green and stone. You expect drums or fire, maybe someone shouting dramatic orders, but it's all whispered. The warriors crouch low, eyes sharp, expressions flat. You're told to stay back until the signal. Your job is simple. Run in after the initial charge, grab what you can, and avoid dying. Easy. You wait in the shallows while the older men sneak up the shore. The monastery is smaller than you thought. One main building, a few outbuildings, a wooden fence that wouldn't stop a determined chicken. You catch glimpses of robes and hear chanting. The monks have no idea what's about to hit them. The signal is a raven call, unnaturally loud and sharp. You leap forward with the others, boots slapping through wet grass. Everything happens at once. A door crashes in. Screaming erupts, high-pitched and terrified. The chanting turns into panic. You freeze for a second at the edge of the courtyard, watching a man in a robe try to fight off your uncle with a wooden cross. You move, finally, into the smoke and noise and chaos. You duck past a toppled cart, scoop up a silver bowl, then another, stuffing them into a sack that already smells like mead and blood. You push into a storeroom and find barrels of something. Grain, wine, you don't know. You take it anyway. Then without warning, someone grabs you. It's a monk, young, barely older than you. His hands shake as he shouts something you can't understand, and he's trying to pull your sack away. You shove him. He stumbles, trips, and smacks his head against the stone floor. You stand there for a moment, frozen. He's not moving. You don't know if he's dead. You don't want to know. Back outside, the fire has caught. Smoke curls from the thatched roof. The others are shouting to retreat. No use burning the whole thing down if the ship's still in one piece. You sprint to the beach, heart hammering, mouth dry. Your hands are shaking, you still have the silver. You make it back onto the ship, and you're not the only one with wide eyes and pale skin. Even the seasoned raiders look grim. No one cheers, no one sings. It was a successful raid by Viking standards, but success is a complicated thing. You sit at the edge of the boat, sack between your knees, staring into the sea as it slowly washes the blood from your boots. Here's something the sagas don't mention often. Not everyone was built for raiding. Some Viking men stayed behind on purpose. Farmers, craftsmen, the quiet ones. Others went once, came back changed, and never left again. And some never made it back at all. Later, as you sit by the hearth back home, you watch your father count the loot. He seems proud. You try to mimic his expression, stone-faced, detached. You succeeded. You did what you were supposed to do. But your mind keeps looping back to the boy in the robe, his hand reaching toward you, not in anger but confusion. You think about the strange feeling that bloomed in your chest when you pushed him. Not triumph, not rage, something else. Something you don't have a name for yet. Your mother places a bowl of stew in your lap. You stare into it for a moment before eating, half hoping the heat will scrub your insides clean. It doesn't. That night you lie awake while the others snore, your axe beside you. The fire crackles softly, your boots are drying near the hearth, and you realise that surviving a raid doesn't mean you're unscathed. It just means you get to think about it for the rest of your life. You dream about it for nights. Not the fire, not even the screaming, but the moment of stillness, right before you push the monk. That frozen second when time slowed, when your hand was on his chest, and you were still deciding what kind of person you were going to be. That moment plays over and over, until it isn't even a memory anymore, just a feeling lodged behind your ribs like a splinter you can't reach. But you don't say a word. No one talks about it. Not really. After a few days, the loot from the monastery is already being traded, melted down, repurposed into brooches and belt buckles. The bowl you grabbed is now holding goat butter in the longhouse. Every time you see it, something tightens in your chest. But it's just another object now, stripped of meaning. And now, there's something new to worry about. You're going into the shield wall. You thought your first raid would earn you some rest, maybe a little status, maybe even a day where you weren't constantly being roped into hauling firewood or chasing escaped pigs. But no, you're being trained now, seriously. The elders think it's time you learned what real combat is like, and that means joining a training shield wall. You try to act excited. You try to act like your ribs aren't crawling with dread. The field outside the village is muddy, the ground torn up from weeks of practice. The other boys, some older, some your age, are already lined up, shields in hand. These aren't the painted ceremonial ones from the sagas. These are practical, ugly, heavy things made of layered planks and rimmed with iron. Yours smells like mildew and stale sweat. You grip the handle tight anyway. You're told to lock shields with the boy beside you. His name is Ivar. He's taller, stronger, and definitely already killed someone. He nods at you once, sharp and businesslike. Then the line begins to move. "Advance!" the captain shouts. You push forward, your body jammed tight between Ivar and another boy on your left. The shields grind against each other. Your breath fogs behind the wooden wall. The mud sucks at your boots, and your legs burn almost immediately. Then comes the hit. It's not a gentle nudge. The opposing line crashes into yours with enough force to stagger the whole formation. The shields shudder. Your arms scream under the impact. The boy across from you is snarling, his face inches from yours, wooden swords slamming against your shield again and again. You try to keep your footing. You try to remember the instructions. Lean in, hold the line, use your shoulder. But it's chaos. You get knocked sideways, and Ivar has to shove you back into place with an elbow to your ribs. "Stay tight," he growls. You do, somehow. Viking combat isn't about flashy duels or single combat under a spotlight. It's about formations, discipline, and terrifying noise. The shield wall is the spine of any army. If it holds, you live. If it breaks, you die. That's the rule. And today you're learning it firsthand. Someone strikes your shield low and your arm buckles. Pain shoots through your wrist. You cry out, more surprise than agony, but it earns you a crack across the helmet from a wooden blade. Your vision blurs. You stagger, shield dropping for a second, and that's all it takes. You hit the mud hard, back first, breath knocked out of your lungs. Ivar curses as he stumbles over you. "Dead!" the captain shouts, pointing at you. "You're dead!" Again. You lie there for a moment, blinking up at the grey sky, rain beginning to fall in cold, fat drops. The taste of wet dirt fills your mouth. Your arms tremble. You're not dead, but you understand now why someone would choose farming instead. Eventually, you're dragged to your feet and ordered to run drills until your legs stop shaking. You do. You always do. That's the rule. Show up, take the hit, get back up. By the end of the day, you're covered in bruises, your forearms swollen, your knees shredded by gravel and mud. But you lasted longer in the next round, and the one after that. You didn't fall again, not today. That night, while everyone else eats and brags, you sit quietly by the fire, turning your helmet over in your lap. It has a dent now from the blow you took straight to the temple. You poke it with your finger, wondering if you'll still have a headache tomorrow. You probably will. Your father passes by and grunts in approval. That's his way of saying, "I'm proud of you." You don't answer, you just nod. The truth is, you don't know if you're cut out for this. You're stronger now, sure. You lasted in the line. But in the chaos of it all, in the crashing, shouting, crushing wall of wood and rage, you didn't feel brave. You felt small, like a stone caught in a landslide. And here's something you didn't expect. No one else seems particularly heroic either. The boys who fight the hardest also look the most afraid. They hide it well, but you're learning how to spot the tremble in someone's grip, the way they clench their jaw to keep their teeth from chattering. The shield wall isn't a stage for glory, it's a meat grinder with structure. Some scholars say the shield wall was more effective psychologically than tactically, that its real strength was in unity, the appearance of being unbreakable, a wall of warriors moving as one. Maybe that's true, but from inside the wall all you feel is pressure, sweat, splinters, fear. Still you're here, and you're alive, and tomorrow you'll do it again. You lie down that night with your shield beside you, your helmet resting like a loyal dog at your feet. You stare at the rafters, listening to the wind whistling through the cracks, and you wonder how many more hits it takes to become the kind of person who doesn't flinch anymore. You guess you'll find out. You're starting to collect scars now, not the dramatic, story-worthy ones like a clean sword cut across the chest, or a bear claw down the back, but the small, persistent kind. The ones that come from daily Viking life. Rope burns, splinters, bruises under your fingernails, the occasional slice from your own blade when your hand slips during practice. Right now, you're watching a thin line of blood bead on your thumb where you nicked yourself trying to carve your initials into your shield. Not exactly heroic, but it still stings. Injuries here are constant and healing is, let's say, experimental. You've spent the morning with Haldis again, the healer with a taste for strong-smelling things and cryptic wisdom. And today, she's letting you help make poultices. That sounds helpful and noble until you realise it mostly involves grinding moss, boiling bear fat, and collecting some very questionable fluids. You keep your mouth shut and your nose turned away. Don't let it touch your lips, she warns as she hands you a wooden spoon full of something the colour of sadness. It draws out rot but kills taste. You're not sure what kind of rot she means, wound rot, soul rot, tooth rot, but you nod solemnly and stir it into a pot of steaming water. The smell that rises up could be used as a weapon. You ask her what happens if a wound doesn't heal. She shrugs. Then the gods didn't want it to. And that's that. Her worldview is as firm as her jawline. It doesn't help that most medical knowledge around here comes from observation, trial and error, and a dash of superstition. One guy swears that wrapping a wound in fish skin helps it close faster. Another claims that frog bile mixed with crushed oak bark cures fevers. Some people wear amulets blessed by seers to prevent injuries entirely, though judging by their limps, the results are hit or miss. What's real, though, is the constant risk of infection. You've seen it happen. A simple cut turns red, puffy, then black. Fever sets in, breathing gets heavy, and then comes the silence. When someone dies from a wound, it's not a loud cinematic exit. It's slow, ugly, and often happens in the corner of the longhouse while everyone else pretends not to notice. You remember one man, Thorgeir, who sliced his hand open skinning a boar. Within a week, he was gone. Haldis did what she could. Wrapped it, poulticed it, even sang over it. But nothing worked. The rot won. Today, you're helping her treat a warrior who took a bad hit during shield wall training. His leg is torn open from mid-thigh to knee, deep enough to see things you're pretty sure should stay hidden. The smell alone tells you this isn't going to end well. Haldis works quickly, pressing a mixture of yarrow and honey into the wound, muttering to herself all the while. We keep the flies off, we keep the rot out. You nod, pretending to understand. You're mostly holding the poor man's hand while he moans through gritted teeth. His name is Ketil, and he hasn't stopped shaking since he was carried in. Not from fear, from fever. "Drink," Haldis says, shoving a horn full of something cloudy into Ketil's mouth. He chokes, sputters, but swallows. You ask what's in it. "Fermented root and spirit," she says. Helps him forget the pain. For a while you suspect a while is measured in minutes, not days. There's a theory among historians that Viking healers were more advanced than we give them credit for, that they understood antiseptics in a primitive waveform and used fermented substances to fight infection. Others argue that healing was more about ritual and placebo, with herbs serving a symbolic role rather than a medical one. Watching Haldis, it feels like both. She believes in her work, and the work sometimes works, but it also sometimes doesn't. Ketil survives the night, which surprises everyone. He's still burning with fever, still half delirious, but breathing. You help change his bandages, carefully peeling away the cloth and reapplying fresh moss soaked in vinegar. He winces but doesn't scream. Good, Haldis mutters. He wants to live. You go back to your bunk smelling like vinegar, blood and goat sweat. Your hands are stained green. You can't stop thinking about the wound. How close it was to the bone. How thin the line is between standing in the shield wall and lying in the corner fading into the firelight. Your own body aches. Your wrist is still sore from training. A bruise on your ribs makes it hard to breathe deeply, but none of it's serious. Not yet. You wonder how many of your friends will live long enough to reach the age where wounds stop being a weekly occurrence and start being fatal with certainty. You fall asleep to the sound of coughing. Not yours. Someone in the back of the longhouse, hacking like they're trying to escape their own lungs. It's been going on for days. No one says it, but you all know it's the sickness. Sometimes it passes, sometimes it doesn't. The gods decide. Before sleep fully claims you, Haldis's voice echoes in your mind. He wants to live. You wonder what she'd say about you. If you took a bad cut to the leg, if your shoulder tore open in battle, would she see that same spark in your eyes? Would it be enough? You touch the edge of your most recent scab, it's healing. For now. You drift off knowing that in this world healing is not guaranteed. It's a gamble, a half prayer, a stubborn clinging to life while the odds grin at you through their yellow teeth. And every day you wake up still breathing? That's a victory. It's deep winter now and everything has slowed to a crawl. The longhouse creaks under the weight of ice clinging to the thatched roof. The smoke hole at the top does little to keep the soot from settling into your lungs, and even less to release the sharp stink of sweat, animals, and desperation. Outside, the world is frozen solid. Inside, you're all just trying not to starve. Viking winters are like being trapped in a slow-moving punishment. The daylight disappears, if it shows up at all, and every morning feels like waking up inside a cold grave. There's no way around it. You're stuck. Everyone is. The days are dictated by the same repetitive tasks. Chop wood, mend gear, patch clothes, cook thin soup with even thinner roots. You chew through the dried stores slowly, carefully. Rations are watched like gold. No one eats more than they're supposed to, not unless they want to risk the shame and potential punishment of greed. There's a quiet tension in every meal. You feel it each time someone scrapes their bowl a little too long or stares too hungrily at the hanging slab of smoked meat no one's touched yet. Your boots are cracked. Your fingers are always stiff no matter how close you sit to the hearth, and the hunger never really leaves. It just goes quiet for a few hours after each meal, then returns with sharp little whispers. You dream about bread. Not even good bread, just warm bread. That's enough to get you through a night. And it's not just the body that suffers, it's the spirit. The old ones say that winter isn't just a season, it's a force. It tests you, weighs you, tries to wear down your will. Some believe in spirits that haunt the snowfields, looking for lost souls or weak minds to whisper into. You're not sure you believe in that, but on the coldest nights, when the wind howls like a dying wolf and your breath fogs thick enough to hide your own hands, you wonder. People get quiet this time of year. They argue more easily. Some retreat into silence altogether. Your cousin stopped speaking a week ago, after his father died from a fever that took only 2 days to kill him. 1 minute he was coughing. The next he was gone, wrapped in a fur and buried under the frozen soil with barely a prayer. No one could dig deep enough. They say the wolves will probably get him when the ground thaws. You try not to think about that. There's no room for sentiment. Every life is one less mouth to feed. It's a horrible thing to admit, even silently, but you see it in the eyes of the adults. When someone dies, there's grief. Yes, but also a moment of strange relief. Less meat, more soup for the rest. Fewer bodies fighting for warmth by the fire. One fringe tradition you've only ever heard whispered about is utburda, the exposure of unwanted or unfit infants. It's said that in the most desperate winters, a weak or sick newborn might be quietly left outside, a sacrifice to the gods or simply to fate. It's not spoken of openly. But you've noticed that this winter 2 newborns have gone missing, and no one has offered an explanation. The mothers walk around with vacant eyes. No one asks questions. You've taken to working the food stores every day, counting and recounting what's left. You weigh the barley sacks in your hands, estimate the dried fish, poke at the withering vegetables hanging from the rafters. It's not enough. You all know it. Your mother tries to hide her worry, but you hear her arguing with your father late at night. The supplies were fine until that last raid. He doesn't respond. Or if he does, it's with silence that says more than words. The livestock is thin. The goats bleat constantly, hungry and restless. You're feeding them less and less each day. One of them is limping now, and you know what that means. It won't make it to spring. You've already been told to fetch the knife tomorrow. You hate the thought, but you don't argue. You can't. To distract yourself, you help haul this again. Her herbs have mostly run out, so now she's improvising. Burning pine needles, crushing dried mushrooms, whispering to the gods under her breath. She tells you stories of winters past, of times when they ate bark from trees and ground up bones to boil for soup. You laugh, thinking she's joking. She's not. She shows you a pile of cracked bones in the corner, already simmering in a pot. You swallow hard. And yet, through all this, the village persists. People adapt. Someone carves little figures out of bone and leaves them near the hearth. A girl recites sagas in a shaky voice, and everyone listens, if only to remember warmer times. Your sister sews patches onto your cloak with thread so thin it breaks if you breathe on it wrong. She keeps trying anyway. There's still beauty, even now. The sky, when it clears, is impossibly bright with stars. You go outside one night and see them arranged like runes across the black. The air is so cold it hurts to breathe, but the silence is deep, sacred almost. You stay there longer than you should, frost gathering in your eyelashes, listening to nothing, just the wind, just the breath of the world. That night your father kills the goat. You help him, you hold the bowl. It thrashes and your arms shake, but you don't let go. He nods once when it's done. You drag the carcass back together, your boots sliding in the snow, and suddenly you understand something you didn't before. Survival doesn't feel heroic. It feels heavy, bloody, exhausting, but it matters. You go to bed that night with the smell of iron on your hands. You're not proud, but you're not broken either. Just a little bit harder. You're not sure what wakes you. Maybe the sound of footsteps crunching on frost outside the longhouse. Or maybe it's just the weight of knowing something's coming. Either way, you open your eyes to find your mother already sitting up, tying her hair back, moving with the grim precision of someone who's done this before. Today's not about war or hunger or cold. It's about something even less romantic. Marriage. No, not yours. At least not yet. But the day is coming, and everyone knows it. Your older cousin, Svala, is being handed off today. That's what it is, really. No white dress, no blushing ceremony. Just 2 families shaking hands over shared goats, a couple of sacks of barley, and the occasional blade thrown in for good measure. You sit quietly near the fire, watching as she smooths her tunic and fastens a brooch at her collarbone, with fingers that tremble only slightly. Her expression is unreadable. Your mother nudges you. Pay attention, she says. This is how it's done. You nod. But you're not thinking about dowries or legal arrangements. You're thinking about how Svala didn't look anyone in the eye yesterday. About how she barely ate. About how the man she's marrying smells like turnips and already has 3 children from his last wife, who died of the cold, whatever that means. You follow the procession out into the snow. A few villagers are already gathered in the clearing, rubbing their hands together, breath fogging in the frigid air. A small table has been set up with bread, cheese, and a bowl of warm mead. The groom stands nearby with his brothers, laughing too loudly. They've already been drinking, of course they have. The marriage agreement is spoken aloud by the village lawman, in that flat, formal tone used for trades and disputes. Svala's father nods. The groom nods. No one asks Svala to speak. She just stands there, hands clasped tightly, a new amber necklace catching the light like a leash around her throat. You wonder if she even knows the man's name. In Viking society, marriage is a transaction first and everything else second. It's about alliances, land, livestock, and keeping your bloodline wrapped up in something sturdy. Love? That's a luxury. If it happens, good for you. If it doesn't, too bad. You still have to share a bed and produce heirs. hopefully ones with strong arms and straight spines. What's unsettling is how normal it all is. People are smiling. A scold starts singing a bawdy tune. Children chase each other in the snow, giggling as they pelt guests with frozen handfuls. You stand off to the side, arms crossed, trying to figure out if this is something to celebrate or just endure. Maybe both. Your father leans over and mutters, "Next year it could be you." You choke on your spit. He just smirks. There's a farmer near the fjord. Strong stock. 2 daughters. Think about it. You don't want to think about it. You're barely more than a child, and the idea of being tied to someone for life, sharing a bed, a home, goats, feels as terrifying as a Saxon ambush. But here, no one waits until they're ready. You're ready when the clan says so, when your beard comes in, when your shoulders square off, when you stop flinching every time someone shouts your name. That's when you're of use. During the feast, Svala sits beside her new husband and eats quietly. He laughs, slaps her back too hard, kisses her forehead like she's a prize mare. She smiles once, a brief flicker, so fast you might have imagined it. You hope it's real. You hope she's found some kind of peace in this, even if it's buried under layers of expectation and obligation. You try not to let yourself think about what happens next for her. The wedding night, the pressure to produce a child, the way failure to do so might get her quietly replaced. You've heard the stories. A woman who doesn't give her husband an heir by a certain number of winters can be cast aside, sent back, traded, or worse. One woman was even accused of witchcraft when her womb refused the seed. No one saw her after that, and yes, some women fight back. You've heard of strong wives who rule households, who manage farms better than their husbands ever could. A few even go raiding, sword in hand, hair braided like a battle flag. But they're the exception. For most, it's a life of bearing and burying children, cooking, weaving, praying. There's debate among modern scholars about just how much autonomy Viking women had. Some say they had remarkable rights for their time, able to divorce, claim property, run businesses. Others argue that was true only in rare cases, and that marriage was usually a sentence. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Some marriages worked, some didn't, like anywhere else. Except here, the options for escape are limited to death or exile. Back in the longhouse after the feast, the mood is strange. Half celebratory, half exhausted. You lie on your sleeping mat, staring at the ceiling, listening to the crackle of the fire and the quiet murmurs of your mother and aunts as they clean up the remains of the meal. Your little sister is humming to herself, weaving straw into something vaguely goat-shaped. Your brother is snoring, mead-heavy and flat on his back. You think about your future, about the faceless person you might someday be tied to, about how little say you might have in the shape of your life. You don't even know what you want. You've barely had time to think, to grow, to breathe without someone telling you to swing harder, run faster, act tougher. And yet deep down you know what's coming. You've felt the glances, heard the whispers. That one's almost ready. He'll be useful soon. You're not a child anymore. You're a commodity waiting to be traded. It's just a matter of when. You close your eyes and pretend you're far away, sailing across the sea, building your own hall, choosing your own fate. But even in your dream, someone's waiting at the door, holding out a necklace. You're awoken by a scream, not a startled shout or someone yelling about a goat again, but a real chest-deep scream, the kind that cleaves the air in two and turns your blood cold before you even open your eyes. You jolt upright, your heart hammering, and scramble outside into the bitter morning light with half the village already on their feet, blades drawn, barely dressed, eyes wild. The source is a small group near the edge of the forest. You see them crowded around something on the ground, their backs stiff, faces frozen. Someone's kneeling, shaking, whispering a prayer to a god you've never even heard of. Then you see it. A body. No one says his name at first. There's just silence, followed by a slow, horrified murmur. You get closer. Close enough to see the body sprawled out, arms splayed, ribcage torn open like some grim ritual. His face is gone. Literally gone. A deep hollow where it should have been. Blood stains the snow black, steaming in the cold. You've seen death before, sure, but not like this. Someone finally says it. It's Halfdan. Your stomach flips. You knew him. Not well, but enough to recognise the boots, the carved bone clasp on his belt, the gap where his left incisor was missing. He was strong, not the kind you'd expect to go down easy. You don't say anything. You just stand there, heart thudding, eyes locked on the mangled mess of what used to be someone you joked with last week. Then the whispers begin. Couldn't be a bear, someone mutters. No animal does that to a man. It's menskrafter, human hands. Or worse. And just like that, the word everyone avoids but secretly believes begins to drift through the crowd. Bloodurn, the blood eagle, a death reserved for traitors, oath breakers, the worst kind of man. It's an execution that belongs in sagas, not in your backyard. It's one of the most disturbing methods of torture and death ever conceived. The ribs severed from the spine, lungs pulled out through the back, still fluttering like wings. Whether it was ever truly practiced is a matter of hot debate. Some scholars argue it was myth, exaggeration. Others point to sagas and a few chilling accounts, suggesting that it may have been rare but real. You look down at Halfdan and wonder, was he punished? Or was this something darker? The elders convene immediately. You're shooed away like a child, even though you've seen worse than most of them by now. You wander, stunned, trying to make sense of what just happened. There hasn't been a killing in the village for over 2 years, and even then it was a drunken brawl over a spilled drink and a stolen pig. This is different. This was deliberate. And if someone did this, they're still here. By midday, fear has settled over everything like smoke. People speak in half words. No one goes into the woods alone. Children are kept inside. The men patrol, armed even when walking 5 steps to relieve themselves. You hear whispers of a curse, of gods angered by something someone did, something that demanded blood. Some blame the last blot. It wasn't clean, a woman mutters. The sacrifice didn't take. Others talk of witches, trolls, even a draugr, the undead, risen from the grave, hungry for vengeance. You laugh once, bitterly. The idea of an undead warrior haunting your village is less terrifying than the very real fact that someone might have opened up Halfdan like a feast animal. Whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. At dusk, the lawman stands in the clearing and calls for a holmgang, a duel. If the killer won't come forward, then the gods will draw them out through combat. It's a desperate, half-superstitious tactic, but no one argues. If they do, they might be next. No one steps forward. So the lawman names someone. It's Arna, a loner, a woodcutter, quiet. Too quiet, maybe. You've never seen him speak more than a few words at a time. He's not liked, but that's not the same as being guilty. Still, once someone's named, it sticks like pitch. Arn denies everything. But he doesn't do it loudly, doesn't cry out, doesn't fall to his knees and beg. He just says no. That's enough to make people start sharpening blades. The duel is set for morning, trial by combat. The gods will decide. That night no one sleeps. You sit by the fire, turning a small carving over in your hands. A piece of wood shaped like a raven, something Halfdan gave you once during a long boat ride. For luck, he said, or whatever's left of it. You wish you hadn't kept it. Now it feels cursed. The idea of the blood eagle sticks in your mind. Who does that? Why? Was Halfdan truly guilty of something monstrous, or was he just unlucky? A few fringe accounts claim the blood eagle wasn't only punishment, it was a ritual, a dark offering to Odin or Hel. Some say it gave the killer power, especially if done at night, under a specific moon. You don't know if any of that's true, but you can feel it. Something is wrong in the village, something deep and ancient and angry. In the silence, you imagine what it would feel like to be pulled from your sleep, dragged into the cold and laid out on a stone, to feel ribs crack, lungs tear, to hear your own heartbeat stutter under open sky. You curl tighter into your blanket, trying to smother the image. You fail. Morning comes with ash-coloured clouds. The duel is swift. Arna fights well, too well. It unsettles people. He doesn't look like a killer, but he doesn't look afraid either. That alone damns him. When he finally falls, a sword through his gut, no one cheers. They just watch him bleed into the snow, as if waiting for a sign. The ravens don't come. No one says it out loud, but the unease lingers. Was justice done? Or just another death to balance the fear? You help carry his body to the woods. It's quiet. The snow crunches underfoot. Someone murmurs a prayer. You stay silent. Back in the village, people pretend life is normal again. Chores resume. Children laugh. The pigs squeal like nothing happened. But no one lingers outside after dark. And you? You sleep with a knife under your blanket now. because whoever opened Hafdan didn't need a reason, and nothing says they won't want to do it again. The snow finally begins to melt. Not quickly, not all at once, just in sluggish, stubborn patches, like the land is hung over from the misery of winter and needs a few weeks to shake off the cold. You wake to the sound of water dripping from the longhouse roof, and it feels almost like music. The air smells different too. Mud, pine sap, the faint reek of something old and wet rising out of the thawing earth. You stretch under your blanket and feel your joints protest like rusty hinges. Your body still remembers every miserable hour of the long freeze. And now, with spring creeping in, there's no time to rest. Because it's time to return to the other brutal half of Viking life. Farming. You thought raiding was hard. You thought rowing until your fingers bled and your spine turned to rope was hard. But farming, that's a different kind of punishment. It doesn't come with the glory of gold or song or blood-splattered axes. It just comes with aching knees, cracked skin, and the constant realization that no matter how hard you work, the land might still decide to kill you. The fields aren't really fields yet. They're clumps of cold, soggy dirt riddled with stones the size of your fist. You and your father spend the morning hauling rocks out of the ground, one after another, piling them at the edge of the property like some offering to a very bored god. Your fingers are numb from the wet earth. Every time you think the frost is gone, it slaps back like a trickster spirit. You dig anyway. Ploughing comes next. The plough is a wooden beast with a heavy iron tip dragged by a half-starved ox that farts constantly and seems to hate your entire bloodline. You're told to guide the blade while your brother holds the reins. Within minutes, your boots are caked in muck and your shoulders are screaming. The plough jumps over roots. The ox stumbles. You fall. Twice. Your father doesn't even look back. He just says, again. See, farming here isn't noble. It's survival. Most Viking families don't live on plunder. They live on what they can pull from the soil, often with fingers too cracked to hold a spoon at night. And it's not just grains. It's flax for weaving, beans, barley, cabbage if you're lucky. Every bite next winter depends on what you do now. Every row planted, every seed covered, every weed ripped out like it owes you money. You pause to catch your breath, wiping sweat and mud from your face. Your sister passes by with a basket of tools and doesn't even smile. No one's smiling. This isn't the fun part of the Viking image. This is the part where you break your back for the right to not starve again next year. You take a break at midday, eating a slab of cold fish and a crust of bread so hard it could double as a weapon. You chew slowly, staring at the sky, wondering if this is all life will be from now on. Cycles of freezing, planting, surviving. You hear a distant bird call, the first in weeks. That, at least, feels like a small gift. There's a moment in the afternoon when something shifts. You and your brother are weeding a stubborn patch near the fence when you find bones. Not animal bones. Too clean. Too human. You freeze, then call your father over. He kneels down, studies them, says nothing for a long moment. Old grave, he finally says, from the last family who lived here. You ask what happened to them. They didn't plant early enough. He says it like it's a weather report. No emotion, just a fact. You stare at the bones, suddenly aware that the line between your family and theirs is thinner than you'd like to admit. Later, he tells you to keep digging. So you do. At dusk, you help with the fencing. A boar got in last year and destroyed an entire row of carrots. You're told to sharpen wooden stakes and drive them into the ground at intervals. Your hands blister. You bleed a little. You keep going. There's no other option. One quirky thing you notice. Some of the older farmers tie small carved idols to their fence posts. Little wooden gods with beady eyes and exaggerated bellies. You ask your uncle about it, and he shrugs. Keeps the harvest spirits happy, he says, or at least confused. There's debate in scholarly circles about just how much of Viking farming was entwined with superstition. Some argue it was deeply spiritual, with offerings and rituals woven into every stage of planting. Others say it was mostly practical, feed the family first, please the gods later. Watching your aunt leave bread crusts at the edge of the field, you suspect it's both. As night falls, you return to the longhouse. You're too tired to speak. Your legs throb. Your shoulders feel like they've been used to hold up a roof. You eat without tasting anything. Your mother says the seeds will go in next week and you groan before your mouth even finishes chewing. Before sleep, you sit outside for a bit, wrapped in a cloak, staring out at the tilled land. It looks rough now, scarred and angry. but you can see the shape of it, the potential. If the gods are kind, if the frost stays away, if the pest hold off, if the barley doesn't rot, that's a lot of ifs. You think about the raiders who never came back, the ones who left to chase gold and glory and were buried in foreign dirt. You wonder quietly if they had the better end of the deal. Then your mother calls you inside. You stretch your aching limbs and drag yourself back under the sagging roof, the smell of old soup and damp straw greeting you like an old friend. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, because food doesn't plant itself. You hear the story long before you hear the name. It starts as a whisper by the hearth, passed from tongue to tongue, changing shape with each retelling. At first it's just some fool who tried to take a shortcut across the mountain. Then it becomes a man who fought a bear with his bare hands. By nightfall it's a saga, and by the next morning it's yours. That's how it happens here. You don't ask for legend. It finds you, wraps itself around your shoulders like a wolfskin cloak, and dares you to shrug it off. Your uncle carves the tale into a chunk of driftwood before breakfast. A trader passing through repeats it, already more dramatic. You watch, stunned, as your trip to fetch timber 2 weeks ago transforms into a larger-than-life epic involving frost giants, a collapsing bridge, and a flaming spear that never existed. Apparently you're the hero now. You don't remember it that way. In your version, the snow was waist-deep, the wood was wet, and the only thing that nearly killed you was boredom and an overconfident squirrel. But someone saw you dragging back a log the size of a canoe, and your cousin swears he saw smoke in the distance and heard wolves. Now everyone's calling it the firewood trial. You've officially been sagafied. The village is hungry for stories, not just food hungry, soul hungry. After the winter you all just crawled out of, they need something to cling to. Something that reminds them they're not just shivering nobodies scraping fungus off rocks, but part of something bigger. A myth, a bloodline, a song. Your story becomes part of the rotation. At night, while the fire crackles and someone slurps their fish broth with way too much enthusiasm, the local skald retells it. With flair, of course. You sit quietly at the edge, hood pulled low, pretending you're too tired to care. But when he gets to the part where you defy death at the mouth of the ice river, you can't help but smirk. It wasn't an ice river, it was a slightly soggy ditch. Still, sounds better his way. This is how it works. The sagas aren't history, they're memory, stylized, shaped, soaked in mead, and sharpened like a blade. They carry truth, yes, but also exaggeration, embellishment, imagination. One scholar once described the Icelandic sagas as half memory, half theatre, and a quarter complete nonsense, which doesn't add up mathematically but feels absolutely correct. Still, once you're in a saga, even a local one, you don't get to step back out. People start treating you differently. Not better, just expectantly. They look at you like they're waiting for the next chapter. When a wolf is spotted near the southern hills, they glance your way. When the meat goes missing from the smokehouse, someone says, "Ask him, he survived the mountain." The pressure is subtle but heavy. Suddenly you're not just some boy with a chipped tooth and a limp from training injuries. You're the one who returned, even if you barely did. One of your friends, Sigurd, pulls you aside a few days later. I heard in one version you fought a spirit. You stare at him. A spirit? He nods solemnly. A white-eyed ghost with frost in its beard. You laugh, until you realise he's serious. Then you realise everyone is serious. You try to correct the record once. Just once. You explain that there was no ghost, no fire, no wolves, just snow, bad footing, and a very angry owl that dive-bombed your head. But no one listens. Worse, they look disappointed. Like you've let them down. You learn quickly. Truth is heavy, but story floats. So you let the saga grow. And boy does it grow. Someone carves your name into a piece of bone and wears it as a necklace. Another paints a version of the tale on their shield. An abstract swirl of red and white that supposedly represents you standing triumphant with your enchanted log. You hear that a woman in the next village has named her newborn son after you, which is flattering until you find out she also named her goat the same thing. You begin to understand the strange burden of being remembered. If you die tomorrow, you won't just vanish, you'll be retold, edited, canonized. You'll become a lesson, or a warning, or a footnote, and you won't get to control which. There's a dark side to it too. A man named Bjarke used to be the local saga star, known for wrestling a bear in a river and winning. But when he fell during a raid, a spear through the chest, people stopped talking about the bear. Now all they mention is how he turned coward and ran too slow. Your father told you the truth. Bjarke had a twisted ankle and died protecting a boy who couldn't hold his shield, but that part didn't stick. It didn't rhyme. That night, you sit by the fire again while the skald performs a new verse. Your saga now has chapters. This time, he adds a dream sequence where the gods visit you and grant you strength. You remember that night. You were feverish and hallucinated a very angry raven yelling at you about dried fish. But sure, let's say Odin sent a vision. As you lie awake in the longhouse staring at the flicker of firelight dancing on the rafters, you wonder what it means to live in a story, whether it protects you or traps you, whether someday someone will sing about the quiet things you did, fixing a broken fence, holding your sister's hand after she fell, sharing your bread when no one was watching. Probably not. Those things don't make good sagas, but they make good lives. Still, tomorrow when you go into the woods to chop more timber, you bring your axe and your best scowl. Because if the saga's going to keep growing, you might as well give them something worth remembering. Even if the truth gets lost along the way, the mead flows too fast tonight, and for once no one tells it to slow down. You're sitting in the longhouse, cross-legged near the fire, watching the shadows of bodies moving, dancing, stumbling in and out of the lamplight. It's a feast night, no real reason, just the kind that happens after a good trade, or when someone finds a barrel of dried apples they forgot they'd buried beneath the floorboards, which apparently someone did. That's all it takes for the mead to come out and the music to start. You're still not used to how quickly things can swing in this place. One day you're carving graves in the frost, the next you're slamming your wooden cup against another's and singing like you've already made it to Valhalla. The shift is disorienting, but tonight you're leaning into it. There's a bonfire just outside the longhouse, its light flickering on snow-streaked earth and melting the icy edge of the air. You can barely feel your fingers, but you keep clapping in time with the beat anyway. A man near the fire started pounding on a barrel with his hands like it's a drum. Others join in with bones, spoons, fists. The rhythm grows fast and wild. Drinking here isn't a pastime, it's a ritual. It's how emotions are released, wounds are soothed, and suppressed thoughts finally get to breathe. Mead is the bloodstream of Viking gatherings, equal parts courage and trouble. You're halfway through your second cup and your tongue already feels too big for your mouth. Somewhere across the room, your friend Sigurd is trying to dance. You think. It could also be a seizure. Either way, he looks happy, arms swinging wildly, hair flying like a sea witch's curse. You laugh until your ribs hurt. Then someone bumps into you from behind and sloshes mead down your back. It's freezing. You shout and whirl around, only to find it's your uncle, already red-faced and wheezing from laughter. "You'll thank me," he says, keeps the lice off. You're not entirely sure he's wrong. The thing about Viking feasts is that they start joyful and end unpredictable. You've seen them spiral into shouting matches, into hugs so fierce they leave bruises, into challenges that begin with, "you wouldn't dare," and end with someone waking up with half an eyebrow. There's a rawness to it all. No masks, no pretense. Just people boiled down to whatever's left when the meat and the drink and the song have stripped away everything else. Tonight someone stands on the table and declares a poem. It's barely coherent, mostly about cows and battle and a woman with teeth like ivory and shoulders like mountains. You're impressed, you think. He ends by smashing a cup and falling off the table. Applause erupts anyway. Here's a quirky tradition you've noticed. Drinking toasts to the gods are often done in rounds. First to Odin for wisdom and victory, then to Njord for wealth and good seas, then to Freya for love and fertility. Everyone takes a drink for each. You do the same, trying to pace yourself. By the third round, you feel warmth blooming in your chest and limbs, slow and heavy like you're turning into honey. After the toasts come the boasts. Vikings love to brag. Not in the modern loud way, but in that ancient poetic style that turns even the stupidest act into something worthy of saga. One man talks about killing a boar with nothing but a fishing hook. Another claims he once stared down a wolf until it blinked first. You consider standing up and telling your own story, but which one? The log-fetching saga? The time you vomited into your own helmet on a raid? You decide to stay seated. But then someone else stands up and calls you out by name. You freeze. It's Holstein, the trader who brought that questionable apple barrel. He wobbles on his feet, but his voice is clear. "This one," he says, pointing at you with a finger sticky from honeymead, "dragged a whole timber through the mountains, carried it like Thor's own hammer. Tell us how you did it." Everyone turns. You stare at the fire, cheeks burning. You don't want to. You hate how your own story has ballooned beyond recognition. But the mead whispers, "Why not?" So you rise slowly and clear your throat. You start small. You tell the truth. A snowstorm. A wrong turn. A stubborn log. But then the words start to twist on their own, like they want to be bigger. You find yourself adding a fox, a near fall into a frozen river, a voice in the wind that might have been a god. The room leans in, drunk and hungry. You give them what they want. You end with a bow, cup raised. The hall erupts in cheers. Sigurd tosses you a chunk of bread. Someone starts chanting your name in a tuneless rhythm. You laugh, but it tastes strange in your throat. You sit back down, unsure of what just happened. Later, the fights start. You see it coming before the first punch lands. Two brothers arguing over who insulted whose wife first. A spilled drink, a misheard comment, then the shove, then the crash. Then it's all arms and feet and screaming. People rush to break it up, but others cheer. You watch from the corner, still holding your cup, feeling the line between celebration and chaos dissolve. Here's where it gets interesting. Viking law allows for fights at feasts if the matter is settled before sunrise. Otherwise, it becomes a full grievance. So now, you're watching two grown men beat each other senseless under an unspoken timer. One eventually gives in, bloodied and panting. The victor shouts, "It's done!" and everyone nods like this is normal, because it is. Eventually the fire dies down and bodies begin to collapse where they sit. The mead runs out. Someone sings a lullaby about a sea serpent and a lost child. You lie on your side, breath shallow, eyes blurry. The taste of honey and smoke lingers on your tongue. Your head hums. Outside, the wind carries a low, slow howl across the trees. In the morning, the hall will stink of regret and spilled ale. People will groan and curse and pretend nothing happened. But for now, in this sticky, drunken moment, everyone is something more than human, mythic, wild, free. You smile into the dark. Then someone vomits on your boots. Of course they do. You spend most of the next morning with a pounding headache and a bucket. Not your finest hour. The air in the longhouse is thick with mead's stale breath and regrets. Someone is snoring with their face in a bowl of cold porridge, and someone else, probably Sigurd, is lying half under the table muttering about fighting the sea in his sleep. Your boots are still outside, frozen stiff and still bearing the evidence of last night's final unfortunate splash. You try not to think about it, but none of that matters, because today the wind has shifted. And with it comes a reminder that nature, like most things in Viking life, is out to kill you. You notice it first when you go outside to breathe air that doesn't smell like fermented shame. The breeze has teeth, sharp and sudden, and it's carrying something heavy, like a warning. The sky has gone that eerie shade of steel grey, the clouds swollen and low. You know that colour. Everyone does. It means something's coming. You're right. By mid-morning, a storm hits with the kind of rage that makes even the elders stop and take notice. It's not just wind, it's wrath. It howls through the trees like a berserker, rips thatch from roofs, knocks over stacks of wood and sends chickens into existential spirals. The cold snaps back like it never left. One minute you're shaking off a hangover, the next you're holding down the longhouse door so it doesn't fly off into the next village. Storms are more than just weather here. They're enemies. They're stories. The gods aren't just metaphors. They're in the wind, according to most of the old folks. Thor is angry, or the sky serpent Jörmungandr is stirring in the ocean deep. Your mother throws a pinch of salt into the hearth fire, murmuring under her breath. You pretend not to hear it, but you tuck the bone amulet around your neck a little tighter anyway. It's not just superstition. Out here, a storm can take everything. One bad flood, one roof collapse, one landslide on a hillside path, and you're done. No second chances. You lose a goat, you lose your milk, you lose a roof beam, you sleep in snow, you lose a person, and they're just gone. Maybe to Valhalla, maybe not. Either way, not your problem anymore, except when it is. You're sent to help reinforce the longhouse walls with thick wooden planks. You hammer through numb fingers, each swing of the mallet vibrating into your bones. Your ears fill with the scream of the wind, so loud it feels alive. The smoke from the fire refuses to go upward. curling around your face, choking you until your eyes burn. This is survival work. You're not fixing things. You're defying collapse. Later you're sent to check the animal pens. The goats are frantic. The pigs are trying to eat the slats off their own fence. One sheep is just staring at the sky like it knows something you don't. You reinforce the posts, tie things down, murmur curses under your breath and hope the gods don't hear them. You're soaked by the time you get back inside. Your hair drips onto the floor and your cloak smells like damp fur and regret. But the fire is still going, and someone's stirring something thick and hot in the pot. You sit down, steaming like a slab of meat, and let your limbs thaw. Even now, in the middle of the storm, there's a strange comfort to it all. The longhouse holds. The fire flickers. People pass bowls around and mutter jokes too tired to be funny. There's a kind of camaraderie that only comes from nearly freezing to death in the same room. But you know it's not over. In the night, the storm gets worse. You wake to howling that isn't wind. At least not just wind. A noise outside, deep, wrenching. A crack. Then a scream. Real. Human. You're up before you realise what you're doing, grabbing your cloak and racing outside barefoot, cold slicing into your feet like knives. The snow is blowing sideways, stinging your skin. You can barely see. Shapes move in the white. Shadows, bodies, trees bending like they're trying to break. Someone's shouting for help near the livestock enclosure. You and a few others rush through knee-deep drifts, slipping and cursing and swinging torches. The fence is broken. A tree came down clean through it. One of the goats is dead, crushed. Another is missing. But that's not the worst of it. A man is trapped beneath the fallen trunk. It's Leaf, one of the older fishermen. You recognise his boots first, sticking out from under the splintered mess. He's alive somehow, his legs caught under the weight, his face grey with pain. You dig, you heave, you grunt through gritted teeth. For 10 minutes your world is just the wood and the snow and your hands going numb as you try to save a man who once gave you your first fishing hook. You free him, eventually. His legs are ruined. You carry him back through the storm, wrapped in furs, groaning like a dying animal. His wife meets you at the door with wide eyes and no tears. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. Holdis works on him all night. The fire burns hot, the herbs stink, and the air is thick with tension, but it's no use. By morning he's gone. You sit outside as the storm weakens, bundled in every layer you own. The snow has stopped. The wind has calmed. But the sky is still heavy, like it's waiting for an excuse. Storms teach you things about the world, about yourself. You learn how fast things can go wrong, how little control you actually have. How strength isn't about lifting logs or swinging axes, but holding the line when everything around you tries to break it. You watch the horizon as the clouds begin to part, revealing the pale blue of morning. There will be more storms, but for now, the sky lets you breathe. You've never seen a rune carved with this much care. It's shallow, yes, just a few precise lines gouged into a piece of smooth pine, but it gleams under the firelight like it means something far beyond the obvious. Your friend Thora made it, sitting cross-legged in the dirt outside her family's longhouse, whispering to herself while her blade scratched careful symbols into the wood. You ask her what it's for. She glances up with a smirk. Protection, she says, or maybe mischief. Depends how you read it. That's the thing about runes. They're not just letters. They're power, or at least that's how everyone treats them. Some say they came from the gods, carved by Odin himself, who hung for 9 days on the great tree bleeding and broken, to pull knowledge from the void. Others say they're older than the gods, just shapes drawn from the bones of the world. All you know is, when someone carves one, everyone steps back. You've just started learning them, slowly, awkwardly. There's no school, no formal lessons. You sit beside whoever's willing to teach, watching as they scrape and notch, explaining what each shape means. Fehu for wealth, Uruz for strength, Algiz for protection. Some have clear meanings, others are trickier, changing depending on who's asking and how they're drawn. You've already made mistakes, once inscribed a healing rune backwards, and Holdis made you burn it before it tangled your guts. The rune sticks with you all day, buzzing quietly in your mind like a gnat you can't swat. You start seeing runes everywhere, in fence posts, scratched into the handles of tools, burned into the beams above the longhouse hearth. One man even has them tattooed on his knuckles. When you ask him what they mean, he says, nothing. but they keep me from punching someone I shouldn't. You're not sure if that's wisdom or just very specific self-control. Later that week, you're told to help carve a grave marker for Leif, the fisherman crushed in the storm. It's your first real responsibility involving runes, and you don't want to mess it up. Thora comes with you, quietly handing you a bone-handled knife as you kneel beside the wood plank. The wind is cold but calm now, and everything feels sharper under its breath. You trace the symbol slowly. His name, his lineage, a brief phrase about his bravery in the storm. You pause before the final rune, uncertain. "What's the right one for a peaceful passing?" you ask. Thora shrugs. "There isn't one. He died helping others. That's enough." So you carve a symbol for strength. It feels right. There's an ongoing debate among the elders about whether runes should ever be used casually. Some say every carving is a spell, a promise, a call. Others believe it's just writing, a way to mark things. You watch two old men nearly come to blows over a disagreement about Perthrow, the rune of fate and hidden things. One says it should never be carved into a home. It invites too much mystery. The other says it belongs above the door to remind you that you don't know what's coming. You quietly decide never to use it. Thora, on the other hand, uses runes like she's playing with fire. You've seen her carve one into a bone and leave it on someone's doorstep. When asked about it, she just smiles and says, "Let's see what happens." It's hard to tell if she believes in magic or just likes messing with people's heads, and it's not just kids playing games. The seeress, an old woman with hair like spider silk and eyes that never quite focus, uses runes for divination. She throws small carved stones onto a cloth and reads their pattern like a map. You watched her once. She muttered to herself, touched each stone with trembling fingers, then looked you dead in the eye and said, "Your name will outlive your body." You didn't sleep well for 3 nights after that. There are fringe beliefs about runes that few talk about aloud. Some say certain symbols, when carved under a full moon, can summon spirits. Others claim there are lost runes that the gods hid after humanity misused them, symbols too dangerous to be spoken or scratched. Thora insists one of them is hidden in the shape of a tree root near the river. You went to see it once. It looked like a twisted knot. Nothing more. But you didn't step on it. And yet, for all their mystery, runes are also practical. Farmers use them to mark their tools. Fishermen etch them into oars for luck. Warriors burn them into sword hilts, hoping for sharper strikes and stronger arms. You've started carving one, a small awaz for resilience, into the inside of your shield. It's a little crooked, but it's yours. One night you sit by the fire with Thora, passing a piece of driftwood back and forth. You each take turns carving a rune, building a secret story together in symbols. She adds one for travel, you add one for memory. She carves a jagged shape you don't recognize. "That one's made up," she says. "It's just ours." You smile and leave it. You keep that piece of wood in your belt now, tied with a leather cord close to your skin. You're not sure if it does anything, but when the wind howls through the cracks in the wall, or when your breath clouds from fear instead of cold, you feel for it. Runes don't promise safety. They don't make you invincible or wise or brave, but they're something to hold on to. A little order in a chaotic world. A message scratched into the bones of things saying, "I was here. I left my mark. I meant something. And really, what else can you ask for?" Trade season comes like a cautious thaw. Slow, uncertain, but full of possibility. It doesn't feel like much at first. Just a few boats dotting the coastline, their sails low, their colours unfamiliar. Then a cart creaks into the village. Then 2 more. Then a man shows up wrapped in dyed linen, speaking a language you've only heard shouted in half-understood curses during raids. And suddenly, your quiet corner of the world feels like the centre of something much bigger. You're sent to help carry crates from one of the arriving wagons. They're packed with thick furs, bronze trinkets, and clay pots sealed with wax. The trader, an older man with silver rings in his beard and one clouded eye, nods at you but doesn't smile. He speaks in clipped words and gestures, and you're not sure if he doesn't know your tongue well or just doesn't care to waste breath. You're not offended. That's how trade works. Everything costs, even conversation. Trade in Viking life is half lifeline, half performance. You don't just exchange goods, you display them, talk them up, flaunt their stories. That comb? Taken from a Frankish noble's wife during a siege. That belt buckle? Gifted by a jarl, stolen from a jarl, gifted again. You never know what's true, but that's not the point. Truth doesn't move wares. Wonder does. Your job is to help haul, to fetch, to hold, to not mess anything up. But you're watching everything. The way your uncle changes his posture when negotiating. The way one of the foreign traders tilts his head at a pair of carved walrus tusks like he's trying to decide if they're sacred or just overpriced. The way your father's eyes narrow when someone tries to sell him salt that's already clumping with damp. These are not random exchanges. They're chess moves. And yet, beneath all the bartering and bluffing, there's an edge to it. Because this isn't raiding. It's something stranger. You're face to face with people you might one day fight, or raid, or be raided by. You shake their hands. You smile. But in the back of your mind, you wonder how many of them have blood on their boots. You meet a woman from the east with thin braids and more rings on her fingers than you've ever seen on a hand. She wears blue linen and smells like dried oranges and something floral you can't name. She offers you a carved box in exchange for a polished stone from your pouch. It's a simple deal. She holds the stone up to the light, nods, and disappears before you think to ask where she's going. The box now sits in your belt. It's empty. You check it twice, hoping something might appear. It never does. You still carry it anyway. Then there's the silver merchant. Loud, red-faced, with a laugh that fills the whole clearing, and eyes that don't match the humour. He lays out coins stamped with the heads of foreign kings, and promises they're worth more than iron. You're sceptical. Your father is not. They shake on a deal involving a bow you helped make. You're bitter about that until the merchant hands you a tiny silver coin for the boy's work. It's smooth and cold and absolutely useless here. You treasure it. There's a fringe belief that some coins are cursed, imbued with the spirit of those who held them last. Traders don't talk about it much, but some wrap their foreign coins in cloth and refuse to sleep with them under their roofs. You hear a whispered story about a man who paid for goods with a coin soaked in the blood of a dead king, and every person who touched it died mysteriously within a week. You keep your coin tucked in the box from the woman, just in case. Trade also brings stories. Maybe that's the best part. The goods change hands, yes, but the real treasure is in the words. One traveller speaks of lands where the sun never sets. Another describes a city made entirely of white stone where gold hangs in the air like dust. A third says he saw a whale so large it was mistaken for an island, until it moved. The children laugh. The elders nod gravely. You file each tale away, trying to separate fact from fantasy and realizing you don't care which is which. That night the village hosts the travellers for a shared feast. There's no pretense of trust, everyone keeps their blades close, but the mead flows and the music finds its rhythm anyway. You watch strangers sing songs with unfamiliar scales, their voices climbing in strange winding melodies that sound like birds in a storm. Your people answer with your own sagas, your own boasts and battle chants. Somehow it fits, like different gods singing from the same mountaintop. A trader from the south asks if he can carve something into your shield. You hesitate, then nod. He scratches a small symbol near the rim, a curved line with 3 dots beneath it. Luck, he says, or loss. Depends how you hold it. You laugh, but you keep the mark. The morning after the feast, the traders begin to leave. One by one, the carts creak away, the sails catch the wind, the stories vanish like smoke. You help pack the last wagon and watch it disappear into the trees. The clearing feels too quiet afterward, like something important left with them. You count the new goods, spices, cloth, sharpened tools, some strange dried fruit that smells like fire. They'll stretch your supplies, smooth the next months, but you feel the trade in your bones more than your belly. It brought the world to your doorstep and now it's gone again. You return to your chores, your shield heavier on your back, not because of weight, but meaning. That new mark burns faintly against the wood, even in the cold. Luck or loss. You still haven't decided which one you got. You hear the drums before you see the sails, low, steady and slow, just enough to stir something deep in your gut, like a bone remembering how to be afraid. It's not the rhythm of celebration or song. This is war drumming, the kind that announces itself with no apology, the kind that makes everyone in the village stand up a little straighter, glance at their blades, and start whispering the same 2 words. They're back, and they are. The raiding party returns at sunrise, their ship slicing through the mist like a predator. The long, narrow hull is weighed down with more than just men. There's cargo now. Crates, sacks, a few things that glint when the sun catches them just right. You squint, trying to make out the faces. Some you recognise, others are missing. And then there's the one who stares straight ahead, hollow-eyed, with blood still dried into the lines of his face. He doesn't blink. Not once. Raiding is the part of Viking life everyone romanticizes. The big adventure, the glory, the gold, the stuff of sagas. But when the ship docks and the warriors step onto the sand, there's no cheering. Just the dull clatter of boots and weapons and the quiet, heavy silence of people who left something behind, even if they came back breathing. You help unload the ship. The cargo smells like seaweed, sweat and smoke. One sack is filled with what looks like silver cups and unfamiliar coins. Another holds textiles, maybe. At least you hope that's cloth you're touching. No one tells you what came from where, or who it belonged to. That's not your business. Later they gather in the longhouse to debrief with the elders. You're not invited, but you press your ear to the wall anyway, catching fragments. English coast. Burned the monastery. Resistance stronger than expected. You hear the name of one of your neighbours, someone who didn't return, and a pause so long you think the conversation might have ended. Then someone says, "He died well." That's the metric, isn't it? Not whether you lived or died, just how you died. If you stood your ground, if you took enough of them with you, if you didn't scream, you find yourself staring at the returning warriors for the rest of the day, searching their faces for cracks. One man, Askell, sits outside his hut sharpening a blade that already looks sharp enough to split hair. His hands move like they're not part of him. He doesn't speak, just stares at the sky. You want to ask him what happened, what he saw, what it felt like. But you don't. Because maybe you don't want to know. You spend the evening with Sigurd trying to distract yourselves by repairing one of the fishing nets, but you both keep glancing toward the warriors. "Next year," he says suddenly, "it'll be us." You don't reply. You just keep threading twine through the net like maybe you can weave your way out of fate. The next morning, they burn one of the dead. It's not a full ship burial, not enough wood for that, but it's a pyre carefully stacked, the body wrapped in cloth, sword laid across the chest. Everyone gathers in silence. The searer sprinkles something over the fire before it's lit. Something that sparks blue. You can smell it in your throat. As the flames rise, the wind picks up, and the smoke curves toward the sky like it knows exactly where to go. People murmur prayers. Some whisper the names of other lost ones just to send them along. You keep your mouth shut but press your fingers to your chest, tracing the shape of the rune Thora taught you for safe passage. There's a belief, one not everyone admits out loud, that when someone dies in battle but isn't given a proper send-off, they linger. Draugr, the walking dead. Restless, angry, drawn back to what they left behind. You've seen someone throw salt into a fire and say a name 3 times just in case. Tonight, as the flames crackle and the ashes rise, you silently hope that your village has done enough. Later you find Thora sitting alone, carving something into a strip of leather. She looks up, then nods for you to sit. "I heard they lost 5, you say quietly. 6, she corrects. 1 fell overboard. The sea took him. You pause. Does that count? Thora doesn't answer right away. The sea counts everything. That night the returning warriors finally begin to talk, drunk mostly. The mead has loosened their tongues. You sit nearby, pretending not to listen too closely as they tell the real stories. How the monastery caught fire too early, how a young monk tried to fight with a kitchen knife, how one of your men slipped on blood and cracked his skull on the edge of a pew. They laugh, but it doesn't reach their eyes. One of them, a man named Kjartan, pulls something from his pouch and sets it on the table. It's a necklace, simple, wooden beads, and a single silver charm shaped like a cross. Everyone goes quiet. You don't know if it was taken from someone living or dead, but it's still warm from his skin. "I keep it," he says, voice low, "to remind me what I saw." No one asks what that means, so you leave before the stories get darker. Back in your bedroll, you lie awake, listening to the crackle of fire and the muttered sleep talk of exhausted warriors. You think about raiding, about glory, about what you'd do if you were on that ship. Would you kill? Would you hesitate? Would you come back with silver or not at all? You reach for the rune token in your pouch and roll it between your fingers. The stories don't tell you how cold the ocean wind is, or how heavy a sword gets when it's wet, or how a scream sounds different when it's in a language you don't understand. But now you're beginning to understand this much. Not everyone who comes home really makes it back. You're woken by shouting, and it's not the drunk kind. It's sharp, clipped, urgent, the kind that pries open your eyes even before your mind has caught up. You sit up fast, knocking your knee against the bed frame and sucking in a breath through your teeth. Outside there's movement. Too much of it. Shadows streaking past the longhouse door, feet pounding across the dirt. The clatter of weapons pulled from their racks. You hear your father's voice bark your name once, just once, and you're up. The air outside is still, too still. The kind of quiet that makes the hairs on your arms rise. The sun isn't even up yet, just a faint pale smear on the edge of the sky. Everyone's awake. Everyone's armed. At first you think it must be another raid party, maybe scouts returning too early. But then you hear the word outsiders. Not traders, not neighbours, not anyone who belongs. No one knows who they are, yet. A ship was seen landing down the coast, further out than most people dare to anchor. No flags, no greetings, just shadows moving in the tree line, watching. Could be pirates, could be scouts for something bigger, could be nothing. But in Viking land, nothing is not something you gamble with. You're told to gather firewood, sharpen spears, and stay close. You do all three, in that order, with your hands half shaking and your eyes constantly flicking to the woods. Every movement out there looks suspicious. A bird takes off and you flinch. You've trained for this, sure, but theory doesn't warm your gut when death might be crawling through the trees. The warriors who just returned from the raid haven't even finished cleaning their gear, and now they're lacing up their boots again. You see Askel with a fresh line of stitches down his jaw, and one eye still swollen shut. He's carrying an axe in each hand like he never stopped. No one complains, no one hesitates. It's just assumed, if there's danger, everyone stands up. No excuses. By mid-morning, a small group is chosen to scout the landing. Your father is among them. He doesn't say goodbye, just gives you a look that says, "Take care of your mother," and walks off into the mist. You help the others reinforce the longhouse, again. More timber, more rope, more bracing the walls like it'll help keep fear out. But it won't. Not really. Because this is the part of Viking life they never sing about. The waiting, the stillness, the tightness in your chest that builds minute by minute until you start to feel like you're being swallowed by it. You gather with others near the centre of the village watching the tree line. Some sit, most stand. You overhear people arguing about whether to prepare the escape boats, just in case. No one agrees, because if you prepare to flee, does that mean you've already given up? Someone tells a story, half joking, mostly desperate, about a village far to the north that was overrun in a single night. No warning, no scouts, no mercy. They say the invaders left the bodies hanging from trees, turned the longhouse into a stable, and took the children. You laugh along, but it's the dry kind. The kind that doesn't taste like anything. Midday, no word. You eat hard bread and cold fish, chewing without tasting. Your stomach is a twisted knot. You sit next to Thora and don't say anything. She's gripping a knife too tightly, knuckles pale, staring at the forest like she's trying to will it to blink first. Finally, near dusk, the scouts return. Your father's boots are covered in mud and blood. Only some of it his own. He looks tired, older somehow. You wait for him to speak. "They're gone," he says. "Ship's gone too." The group murmurs. Relief, confusion, suspicion. "They left tracks," someone adds, "but no sign of a fight." Maybe they were just scouting. That word again. Maybe. Everything here is maybe. Maybe they're gone. Maybe they'll return. Maybe they were testing you. Maybe they'll bring friends next time. No one dares relax. Not fully. Still, people begin to exhale. The spears go back in their places. The doors are unbarred. The fire is lit again. You sit near it, listening to the stories people tell now that the danger seems to have passed. But you keep one hand on the hilt of your knife. You don't let it go. That night, your father sits beside you for the first time in days. You don't say anything at first. Just sit shoulder to shoulder in the flickering warmth of the hearth. Then he clears his throat. "They left something behind," he says. You glance at him. A carved token. Small, on the ground by the ship. He reaches into his cloak and pulls out a piece of bone. Smooth, rounded, etched with a spiral symbol you've never seen before. You take it carefully. It feels too cold, even near the fire. You hand it back. "We don't know what it means," he says. "Could be a marker, could be a warning." "Or a calling card," you say quietly. He nods once, then tucks it away. It haunts your dreams. That spiral. You see it carved into trees glowing under the moon, floating in the water like a watchful eye. You wake covered in sweat, your fingers twitching like they want to carve something too. There are debates among the older men now. Some want to send a retaliation raid, hunt down whoever left the symbol. Others say leave it be. Don't wake what hasn't bitten. Haldis says it's an omen. She doesn't say what kind. In the days that follow, you train harder. You sleep with one ear open. You practice your shield work until your arms ache and your thighs feel hollow. You no longer swing for form. You swing like someone might be coming. Because maybe someone is. And here's the truth you don't say out loud. You're not sure which scares you more, the enemies in the woods, or the way your village is getting used to them. You find the burial mound a few days later, half by accident. You're out in the woods with Thora, looking for firewood, or at least pretending to, since mostly you've been arguing about whose turn it is to carry the heavier bundle when you spot it through the trees. It's not marked on purpose, just a raised swell of earth, maybe a few stones stacked near the base, half covered in moss and weathered thyme, but something about it catches your eye. Maybe it's the way the crows avoid it. Maybe it's how quiet the wind gets the closer you step. Thora notices too. She says nothing at first, just follows behind you, her boots soft on the thawing ground. You both circle the mound slowly, as if it might open its mouth and say something, or swallow you. "This isn't one of ours," she murmurs. She's right. The stones aren't local. The shape is wrong. Taller than the usual burial humps, narrower, too deliberate. It doesn't match the village graves near the edge of the ridge. This is older, or stranger, or both. You pause near one end where a small wooden pole juts up, split down the middle and painted with a now faded red. Not a rune you recognise. Thora doesn't either. She brushes a bit of moss aside, tracing the symbol with one finger. "It's not Norse," she says finally, "or it wasn't meant for us." You sit nearby, unsure why you feel pulled here. There's no immediate danger, no bones sticking out of the ground, just that low, steady thrum in your chest, the one that whispers when something ancient is watching. Burial customs here are complicated, not just the pyres and ship graves you've seen, but the silent rules about where and when and how the dead should be honoured. Some get fire, some get earth, some get both. Others, ones who did something wrong or were something wrong, are left outside the bounds of hallowed ground. You wonder if this is one of those, a warning disguised as a resting place. You return to the village and mention it to the elders. They glance at each other and go quiet. Then one of them, a man with no remaining teeth and eyes that seem to see through time, says, "That mound was there before us." He tells the story slowly. How an older people once lived in the valley, traders, sailors, worshippers of strange gods. Some say they carved the stones with songs. Others say they didn't speak at all, just whistled like birds and carried knives made of ice. It's mostly myth, of course. Even the skalds roll their eyes at half of it. But they all agree on one thing. Those people vanished. All at once. Gone like mist. Some say they dug too deep into death, the elder finishes, and couldn't climb back out. Later you tell Thora that story and she just shrugs. That sounds like us too. Still the mound lingers in your thoughts. You dream of it. Not scary dreams, but heavy ones. Weighty. You see yourself standing on top of it while the forest burns around you. You see faces in the stones. Hear your own name whispered from underground. You wake with soil under your nails, though maybe that's just from working the fields. It's planting season again. The thaw is real this time, not just hints. The dirt is soft, darker, and the air smells like potential. But the tension hasn't left. If anything, it's grown. Every task feels heavier now, more urgent. The idea that someone, or something, is watching your village hangs over everyone like fog. The elders finally decide to perform a blot. You've only seen one once before, and even then it was small. Just a goat, some chants, a few prayers, and a communal meal afterward. This one's different. Bigger. They build a platform near the sacred grove, bring out sacred carvings wrapped in linen and bone. The seeress wears black. No jewellery, no paint, just her eyes, which look cloudier than ever. The animal this time is a bull. You don't look away during the offering. You stand still while the blood is caught in a carved bowl, while the smoke rises, while the chants echo through the trees like wind through ribs. It's not meant to be beautiful. It's meant to be heard. They sprinkle the blood over weapons, over doors, over the soil itself. Haldis wipes a bit across your forehead without asking. It stings. You say thank you. You ask your father later what exactly they're praying for. He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, "That we've done enough." You walk through the village at dusk and everything feels slightly shifted. People speak in hushed tones, even as they laugh. No one lights a fire unless they need to. You see a new talisman nailed to the longhouse door, a tangle of bone and string. You don't know what it's for, you don't ask. You catch yourself glancing at the tree line more often, listening for drums or hooves or the crunch of feet in the underbrush. The fear hasn't returned exactly, but the readiness has, like you're one gust away from tipping into something final. The next morning a scout returns with news. Another ship spotted, too far to see the markings, too far to say if it's coming closer. You look out toward the sea, you can't see anything yet, but you feel it. Something's coming. And whether it's storm, stranger, god, or ghost, you know this much. You'll meet it standing.